promoting prevention and control measures, and also at the same time ensuring a coherent and regional approach to this. Further, the WHO notes that the training of staff is a critical element to assist in risk mitigation of COVID-19. This training is but one component of Impact's response. There are many other facets. And to tell us about this is our Director, CARICOM Impacts, Ms. Tonya Ayau, who will deliver remarks on behalf of our Executive Director. Ms. Ayau.
Thank you, Ms. Bushell, and good morning, Her Excellency Harriet Cross, Dr. Joyce and John Carver. On behalf of Lieutenant Colonel Jones, please allow me to express sincerest apologies, but he's now caught in a meeting with the Honorable Robeson Ben, Minister of Home Affairs, Guyana, so he's unable to make this morning's session. However, I will read his remarks to the meeting. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this virtual launch of our project entitled Development of Sustainable Measures Towards Operations in Law Enforcement Based on Requirements to Mitigate the Spread of COVID-19. The overall objective of this project is to support law enforcement, security personnel in CARICOM member states in preventing, mitigating, and containing COVID-19. Today, we are delivering training on the use of PPE to law enforcement in all CARICOM member states in partnership with the Caribbean Public Health Agency. I would like to recognize Dr. Joyce St. John, who has been a key partner of CARICOM Impacts and who has admirably led the region's response to COVID-19. Dr. St. John has always availed herself to support the security sector. I'm also delighted to acknowledge Her Excellency Harriet Cross, British High Commissioner to Trinidad and Tobago, whose office, through the UK government's Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, has generously sponsored this crucial project, amongst others. We are proud to be a partner of the Government of the United Kingdom. Representatives, I also welcome you warmly, and other stakeholder groups, thank you for attending today. Next week, the 11th of March 2021, will mark 1 year since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic. We have sadly lost many lives within this region, and dare I say within the hemisphere, including friends, colleagues, and in some cases, family. Although a vaccine will be an important long-term tool, and in many countries they have started to roll out the vaccine plans for controlling COVID-19, we must continue to double up and focus on prevention of this infection to save lives. And I will leave that for the experts to speak about. Law enforcement, security, and prison officers are carrying out their duties to serve the public in extremely challenging circumstances. As you would recognize, frontline law enforcement, security, and prison officers do not have the option of working from home and/or to socially distance. The nature of police, military, and prison officers' work inevitably subjects officers to environments which may most times increase their risk of exposure to the virus. Our officers need to be provided with the necessary protective equipment, tools, competencies, and training to effectively conduct their duties while remaining safe. For the public to be kept safe, police, military, and prisons officers need also to be kept safe. This includes officers being conscious and up to date with infection prevention and control measures and the appropriate implementation or use of PPE, taking into consideration police, military, and prison settings, as well as the peculiarities of the Caribbean region. The World Health Organization, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and other public health agencies have provided us with detailed guidance on how to do that. However, we've recognized that we needed a training module to effectively implement these guidelines. Today, we are again partnering with CARFA to deliver this training module on the use of PPE to law enforcement. At this moment, I would once again like to thank Dr. St. John, who has made available some of the best minds and experts in the region in the field of biorisk management, epidemiology, behavioral science, and health emergency responses to deliver this training module. The module has been designed to provide you with an understanding of the importance of PPE, and it's necessary and why it's necessary to use, what kind of PPE is necessary in the sector, how to properly use it, adjust, wear, take it off, limitations where they exist, and proper care, maintenance, useful life and disposal of the equipment. The training delivery is aimed at significantly improving national law enforcement, security, and prison officers' capacity to work during this time and in times of future pandemics. I'm also delighted to inform you about 2 additional targeted training interventions, which we are delivering within the framework of this project with the support of the United Kingdom. We have commenced the delivery of mental health and stress management training to leaders, managers, and supervisors within the security sector. Last week, we provided training to more than 120 managers and supervisors, as well as more than 150 officers in the security sector. This training on mental health and stress management will continue this week. We will also deliver training to heads of corporate services, administrative managers, health, safety, and environmental officers from the police, military, immigration, prisons, customs, and intelligence agencies throughout the CARICOM region on environmental prevention measures, including cleaning and disinfection of workspaces on March 15th and 19th, respectively. Heads of law enforcement and security agencies have indicated that this is a key element to assist in the risk mitigation of COVID-19. In addition to the capacity building training, part of this overall project is the provision of 70 desktop computers to the national authorities in prisons or correction centers to facilitate the safe and secure virtual visits between prisoners and their loved ones, as well as to assist those prisons which might not already have the capacity to facilitate court cases or the provision of services for the prisoners to attend court. This will ensure prisoners access the right of visitation during and even after the COVID-19 pandemic. The work of Impacts has not stopped with the coronavirus outbreak. In 2020, despite the challenges faced by the pandemic, CARICOM Impacts has supported CARICOM member states in the security sector with training of almost $6 million in value as part of the agency's provision of capacity building to member states. Most of this training budget was mobilized by Impacts through its partners. This includes a total number of 46 capacity building training sessions with approximately 6,000 officials trained, with 2,534 of those trained being women. Just a few notes on our contribution to the fight against COVID in the region. From January 2020, Impacts has been monitoring persons traveling from countries of interest, and we worked extensively with CARFA on this. Last year, with the support of UK Aid, we donated PPE supplies to 13 CARICOM member states. And throughout the crisis, we have continually coordinated meetings of standing committees, militaries, immigration, customs, etc., to advance best practices, promote prevention and control measures, and ensure a coherent and regional approach within the security sector. And given the nature of the pandemic, we've also had to focus on development of cybersecurity and have conducted cyber intelligence training for prison officers, given the new cyber threats that have emerged during this time. In conclusion, Impacts attaches great importance to this training. We are delighted to provide the assistance that you have asked for and would like to pay tribute to your courage and dedication during this difficult period. This training will assist you to protect yourself, your colleagues, friends, and family in COVID-19. Again, my sincerest thanks to Dr. St. John and to Her Excellency Harriet Cross. And I wish to thank you, the participants, for your kind attention and wish you every success in your training today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yao, Director, Acting, CARICOM Impacts, for highlighting to us the important role that our frontline officers play, and the role our frontline officers play. And I'd like to highlight them today, our participants: police, prisons and correctional facilities, military services, and national and intelligence services. We really do appreciate your efforts, and Impacts' work is to support what you do. And for us at Impacts to support you in ensuring that you remain safe, partnership is critical to this effort. And Mr. Yao had mentioned the critical role that CARFA has played with supporting Impacts and supporting our law enforcement and security agencies. For instance, last year they ran at least 2 sessions for us already on the proper use of PPE. They trained over 1,000 frontline officers. So I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Joyce St. John, the Executive Director of CARFA, one of our key and important partners, to deliver some remarks to us now. Dr. St. John.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Program Coordinator, Ms. Nadine Bashel. Her Excellency Harriet Cross, British High Commissioner for Trinidad and Tobago, Acting Director, CARICOM Impacts, Ms. Ayo, CARFA Facilitators, participants, good morning. Thank you for those kind remarks, Acting Director. CARFA is managing this pandemic from the health security perspective, and so we value our very important partnership with CARICOM Impacts and the many opportunities you have provided to interface with this critical frontline sector. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARFA, to this training for development of sustainable measures towards operations in law enforcement based on requirements to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 in the appropriate use of and requirements for personal protective equipment, PPE. The correct use of PPE is one of the most important public health safety measures in this COVID-19 environment of the circulation of variants, which are more easily transmissible and virulent. I have observed how much CARICOM governments depend on your sector. Therefore, CARFA is proud to be part of this partnership with Impacts, not only for this training, but also for other trainings in collaboration with other agencies in the detection of counterfeit medication and vaccines on the CARICOM market. As CARFA has managed this pandemic from the health security perspective, we are happy to be part of the security cluster and to work so closely with our colleague regional organizations, CARICOM Impacts, RSS, JRCC, and SEDEMA. This multi-sectoral collaboration is a demonstration of the type of regional solidarity that the security cluster has utilized as we seek to protect this region throughout this crisis. While this training is a subset of an ongoing project that the UK has with Impacts, CARFA has also benefited from its long-standing partnership with Public Health England. We thank the UK government for its continued support to the region. I hope that you, the participants, have the best learning experience for these 2 training sessions scheduled for today. And I also hope that by participating in this training, it will be beneficial in saving your lives, that of your family, colleagues, and the community. Have a fruitful exercise. I thank you. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. St. John, for highlighting the link between health and security, and also letting us know that this training is not meant to be a one-off event, but rather to lead to sustainable operational measures at our respective agencies. You also highlighted a critical issue that has come up that we need to be aware of, which is that of counterfeit vaccines and medication. And also, while we spoke of partnership between CARICOM Impacts and CARFA, there are some other critical players, for example, the Caribbean Disaster and Emergency Management Agency, SEDEMA, the RSS, the Regional Security System, and CARFA and Impacts, who have been working very closely together to protect the officers that are working and the general public. So again, Dr. St. John, thank you very much for your remarks. And I would now like to invite Her Excellency Harriet Cross, the High Commissioner to Trinidad and Tobago, to deliver her remarks to us now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just check that you can hear me before I continue?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you to the esteemed speakers who went before me, and to all those who've had a hand in organising today's event. It's much appreciated. And I wanted to say thank you for asking me to say a few words ahead of the training as well. Clearly, as other speakers have said, really COVID-19 is really an unprecedented event and a real challenge. And we have all had to adapt really quickly to new ways of working and new responsibilities. And I'm really conscious that those of you on this call are very much on the front line of that. I'm thinking particularly of police and prison officers. You've really faced high levels of COVID-19 in the workplace, which is a real challenge, not only for your own safety, but for that of your families. And you're really putting yourself at risk in order to provide the greater good to the community and to society. And I think you've all responded absolutely magnificently. You've put public safety first, and you've done your part to protect yourselves and your colleagues. And we want to continue to support you in that. The British High Commission in Port of Spain actually does a lot of work on security issues more broadly. We engage regularly with the security agencies within Trinidad and Tobago, and also work closely with CARICOM Impact and other regional institutions to help counter security threats. But we also work closely with health agencies here. I was delighted to hear about the links with Public Health England. Really good to hear. Last year, for example, we actually took some UK development assistance and we put it into providing critical sanitation and PPE supplies to prison and correctional facilities across 13 CARICOM member states. I think maybe somebody's not on. Hello, I think I went onto mute, but I'm back again now. I hope you can hear me. Can I just check that you can hear me?
Yes, Your Excellency, we're hearing you.
Okay. So let me say that I think CARICOM Impact do an absolutely brilliant job in coordinating training for law enforcement across the region. I think over the last year, you've trained about 1,000 people in cooperation with CARFA, which is so important right now. And I'm really happy that the UK has been able to support this particular initiative to reach yet more people. The training that you're going to receive today, I know will arm you with practical knowledge to help keep you safe. I'm really pleased that CARICOM Impact and CARFA are also addressing the need to understand and manage stress. It's about mental health as well as sort of the more obvious physical sides of COVID-19 impact. I'm really conscious that COVID-19 really is a source of anxiety for a lot of people, and it affects different people in different ways. So I think learning to recognise those signs of stress can really help us build greater resilience, again, as individuals, but also as communities and as work colleagues. So that's all I'll say. I want to wish you well for today's training. I'm sure you'll find it extremely valuable. And let me just finish by thanking again CARICOM Impact and CARFA for their invaluable contribution to the region in organising and delivering this really excellent training. We're really happy to be partnering with you, and I look forward to further opportunities in the future. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, Ms. Harriet Cross. As you know, this project was made possible through the generosity of the donation of the United Kingdom government. And we at Impacts are very happy to continue to partner with you and your country. We also note with appreciation the generous financial support of UK Aid that you late last year, we donated, as you indicated, sanitation and PPE supplies to the corrections and prison services. So thank you very much again for your continued support to the CARICOM region. This brings us to the end of the formal part of the session. I would just like to introduce again our facilitators so that you know who they are. We have Mrs. Sasha Wallace-Sankasing, the Biorisk Manager, Laboratory Services from CARFA. Dr. Cheryl Jones, behavioral scientist, also from CARFA, and Mr. Peter Williams, the technical officer, infectious disease and emergency response, also from CARFA. I would encourage the participants to utilize the information, not as a one-off, as we said, but to inculcate sustainable practices at your various workspaces to ensure that you and the rest of the CARICOM region remain safe. I know you now have an info, so I'll encourage persons to please put on their cameras so that we can take a picture of all the participants and the speakers.
Good, but I'm not even good at one twist to the
Good morning, everyone. My name is Candy Saunders Alfred. We are just going to do a short e-photo. So those of you who can, could you kindly turn on your cameras so that we can take a photo of each of the pages. We have 4 pages, so just be patient with me, please, and so that we can get everyone. Okay, so first screen. Okay, you can have some nice Caribbean smiles in 3, 2, 1. Okay, second screen. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, going on to the third screen. One minute, please. All right, in 3, 2, 1. And the final 4th page. Thanks everyone for your patience. 1 minute. In 3, 2, 1. Thank you all. Enjoy the session.
Thank you to our speakers, Her Excellency Harriet Cross, Dr. Joy St. John, Ms. Tonya Ayau. Participants, enjoy your training. Thank you.
Hello? 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 Yeah, you. Hold on, and a pandemic winner. You're now wearing a mask, you're now washing your hand, and you now keep the required 6 feet distancing from other people. And what could I really cause you? You need to stop it. That no mask, no wash, and no distance something there, nah keep. You know what keep? COVID-19. Yeah, it not gone nowhere. COVID-19, they are same way. So here what you are going to do for all of we. Wear your mask, wash or sanitize your hands pan a regular, and yeah, keep your distance, please. And thanks.
Hi, good morning all. Welcome to this. This is the 3rd session on the use of PPE for law enforcement officers. We want to thank Ms. Bushell for taking us through the opening ceremony this morning. And also we are happy that you are able to join us today also. And again, I would like to thank our facilitators for today, Sasha, Dr. Jones, and Dr. Shelley, who's online with us, and also Peter, who'll be taking you through this 3-hour session on the use of PPE. And thank you, the participants, for being with us today. Don't forget, you need to enroll on the CBSI Connect learning platform, where you will be able to retrieve the course material and also the evaluation and the certificate. Please be reminded to mute your mics and also to use the chat function to post your comments or questions. I will now call on Sasha to take us through, give us an introduction of the what to expect for today. Sasha.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning to all of you joining us on Zoom, the CBSI Connect platform, and Facebook. It's an honor and privilege for us officers of the Caribbean Public Health Agency to be with you once again to deliver this training. So very briefly, this morning, we will be starting off with an update on the COVID-19 situation. And this is really looking at the epidemiological status, what's happening in the countries at this time, as well as what has been happening over the last several weeks with respect to the emergence of variants. I know many of you may have some questions about that. And of course, there's now a shift to vaccines. And that will be done by my very dear colleague, Mr. Peter Williams, who has a lot of experience in emergency response. Peter has already played a great part in the Ebola response in West Africa, as well as in Haiti during the earthquake situation there some time ago. After Peter's presentation, we will allow some time for Q&A, and so we encourage you to please place your questions in the chat. My colleague, Dr. Shelley Rodrigo, will be moderating the chat box both on Zoom, and we will be feeding her the questions coming in from Facebook. So those of you joining us via Facebook, we encourage you for those questions. And also permit me to also do a warm welcome for those persons who are actually in the room with us. And this will allow us to have a more interactive session when we get to the core of the matter with the use of personal protective equipment. I will be doing that session, and we will be having some demonstrations, which I hope that you'll be able to use some of your PPE that has been donated to really try out and make sure that you're comfortable wearing your PPE. While this is really a session to reinforce what you already know, it allows us to evaluate how we've been doing so far. And last but certainly not least, we will have Dr. Cheryl Jones, our behavioral scientist, who will look at the different aspects, which is very critical, as a lot of us are probably experiencing a bit of burnout and drag from the COVID-19 response. It's almost a year that we've been doing this. On the 10th of March will mark 1 year since the first case of COVID-19 was identified in the Caribbean community. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Peter Williams. And Peter will be with you for the next 20 minutes or so. We do encourage you to use the chat function to place your questions. Pete?
Okay, good morning, everybody. Ooh, that's all right. It's not important. Good morning, everybody. I'm Peter Williams, and you've heard my introduction a couple of times. So that's me, and let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about give you a little bit of an update of where we are now and where we've come over the last year. I'm going to talk a little bit about prevention methods. Hopefully you all know them all well and you've heard them many times. talk a little bit about variants and then vaccines. So hopefully this will be exciting and interesting for all of you. And let's go ahead and get started. It's not advancing. Aha, okay. So to start off with a little bit of an epidemiological update, which is the numbers. Hopefully not gonna glass over as I go through the numbers. I won't make it too in detailed. But we started out with looking at the first cases coming out of China in December 2019. And then March 1st was actually when our first case came to the Caribbean. And then on March 11th, 2020, the WHO declared it a pandemic. So we're right in that year mark of when things were really starting to really catch fire. So over 2020, we've seen a lot of waves coming throughout through the world as cases go up and down in different countries and different regions. And then vaccines started rolling out in December of last year. And then, oops, that should be, oh, okay. So the first vaccine was approved at the end of December by the WHO, and I'll talk a little bit more about that process in a minute. And then 2 more were approved in the middle of February, and we're looking at more coming with WHO approval in the coming weeks. Right now, the number of cases, this is actually as of Thursday. So you can see we were at 112 million cases with 2,490,000 deaths worldwide. So that's actually really big. You can see the CARPHA member states here in the middle, that roughly aligns with CARICOM. And so that in our region of the world, we've seen about 107,000 cases with 1,833 deaths. So it's been affecting us here in the region as well. This is just a slide. People in the room, it's probably a little small to see, but you can take a look and see where your country falls. Some countries have been able to keep it quite low, and some countries have had a little bit more of a struggle and have seen some of the cases going up. So these slides will be distributed at the end. So if you want to take a look for your particular country, you're welcome to do that. Okay. So these are the prevention methods that we've been talking about for quite some time now. I'm sure you've all heard them a number of times. The big ones, of course, are to wash and sanitize your hands regularly after touching things that we might normally touch, but it's important to keep your hands clean, wearing your mask appropriately and keeping that social distance, being able to keep 6 feet apart. Avoiding crowds as much as possible. Sometimes that's hard in a grocery store or different things, but trying to avoid those crowds and keep that appropriate distance. Staying home, of course, when you're sick. If you have symptoms, stay home. Don't go to the grocery store. Don't go to work and expose people. And keeping your surfaces clean where you work, as in your car or as you're going around to different stores, making sure that things are clean. So this is where the first poll comes in, Candy. So I wanted to know what you guys feel are really hard in these. Let's see if she can pull that up. Okay, so the question here for the people in the room is, which of these public health measures is hard to you for you to follow during the course of your job? So think about this. People that are on Zoom, you can go ahead and choose multiples of those. Please click which ones you find the most difficult. And they are the same ones that we just talked about. So it's washing your hands, sanitizing, wearing a face mask, keeping 6 feet apart, avoiding crowds, staying home when sick, and then sanitizing your work surfaces. So We'll give them just a few seconds, but people in the room, which ones do you find trouble with? Just shout it out. Cleaning surfaces, is that what you said? Cleaning surfaces? Anything else? Mask? Yeah, the glasses fog up, that's true. Somebody in the back, anybody? Physical distance, sure. Okay, that's pretty good on the poll. Why don't you want to end it and that'll maybe give us the final graph. So looking at these results, it looks like 6 feet apart is the winner there, and then avoiding crowds, which is very similar, of course, and then sanitizing your workplace, sanitizing surfaces. That's pretty important. So of course, all of these are hard to follow at once. But what do you do? What strategies do you have to try to follow these? And these, maybe if there's some that are coming online, you can shout some of them out. Or what do people do to try and follow these a little better?
After I reach to work on a morning, and Saturday, because most of the time we come and I just drop my bag and I don't forget to clean the surfaces already. So I would, when I get a chance, I would clean, just wipe the desk also. Even though it's always sanitized because the cleaners already clean the surfaces first. But you know, you still have to do the little extra on your own.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. What do people do when they can't avoid a crowd or when you can't stand far enough away? Just take a step back. Okay, go ahead.
Wear your mask at all times.
Yes. Wear your mask at all times.
Yes.
Some of these are complementary. That's really good. When you can't stay far enough away, we're far enough away, it's okay. But if I need to come closer, yeah, put your mask on. And maybe that's when you make sure that maybe it'll fog up your glasses for a minute or two, but you know, pull it up, get the full protection, and then when you're able to step away, you can pull it down. Or when you're too close, I know there's a lot of law enforcement on this, and so you may not be able to apprehend a bank robber and ask them to please stay 6 feet away. Please put these handcuffs on yourself. But, you know, you may not be able to follow all of them all the time, but we can take the measures that we can. If you know you're getting into a situation, you can put a mask on, and it may come off during the course of things, but, you know, afterwards, you need to sanitize your hands right away. Do you sanitize your equipment, your handcuffs? In your car, do you sanitize the steering wheel and the hand rests when you get in, and your, you know, maybe your trade-off cars, maybe somebody else is driving through the course. So you can wear a face shield if that's necessary. So you may not be able to follow all of them all the time, but the more you can follow at a time, the better it'll be, the safer it'll be. Okay. All right. So let's take a few minutes to talk about variants. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about this, maybe in the news and different things about them. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time to explain that. Do people know what variants are? Either online or here in the room. Do people know what variants are? I don't know if any comments are coming in. No? Anybody here in the room? Any ideas? Okay. A variant is a mutation. Okay? It's a mutation in the way the virus looks. Okay? In the way that it functions. All the proteins that are on the cells, people are coming in. Okay, mutated strain. I just saw that from somebody. Thank you for that. Right, it's a mutated strain. It's a little change in its DNA. This is extremely common, okay? It's just a little change in the way one protein works or in the way it can infect a cell. So next question. How many are there? Does anybody know? Either online, we got the chat up, or here in the room. Does anybody know how many there are? Yes?
3.
3? Okay, we have 3. Anybody online? Oh, that popped up a little soon. Okay. Well, that lets the cat out of the bag. There's not 3 or 4. There's over 4,000. And this graph I found actually at least Monday, so at least a week ago. All of these dots here are different variants. So there's 3, not 3. There's over 4,000. Okay, so what's the difference? Why do we only hear about these 3 that are important? And actually, there's another one that's out of in the U.S. now. They're saying that there's 3 that are of concern, because not every one of these, while every one of these is a change in the DNA of the virus, it's a change in something in the virus. It's not necessarily a change in the way the virus works in relationship to us, to the human's host. And so I wanted to just take a look at a couple of the variants that have come out. So we know about there's a strain, the UK variant is what they're calling it, that was found, I believe, back. It became apparent about a month or so ago, but it had been transmitting for a little bit in the UK. It's more transmissible and could be deadlier. And that's why it's important to us. Whatever that change in the DNA was, it was enough that it makes it easier for the virus to transmit. So all those other ones, I don't know if this is the UK one in the red here particularly, but all these other ones, they didn't matter so much. But then we got one that really made that change, that made a difference to make it a little easier to transmit it. It could be a little more severe and cause a little bit more severe disease. And so we may see more fatalities. Same thing with the South African variant, which we're not sure it's here in the region or not. We're leaning towards no, but it might be lurking somewhere. Again, more transmissible. There's a greater potential for reinfection. So the other variants, they don't reinfect us so easily for some time because of the antibodies that we work up. But this one, it might. And then we're seeing that it may not be as effective with the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I'll talk a little bit about the vaccines in a few minutes. But this strain, it changed one of the proteins on its membrane, the way it presents. And so the antibodies don't see it the same way, the antibodies that are made from that vaccine in your body. And so that's the advantage that specific strain got. And then similarly, the Brazilian variant, which is a lot closer to us, but may not be here yet. Again, the potential to be more transmissible, and again, the potential to be reinfectious. So it's a mutation. Sometimes it's advantage to the virus. Sometimes it's an advantage to us. It makes it less transmissible. But of course, that one dies out a lot quicker than the one that's more transmissible. Okay. But that brings us back to all of these still work, no matter which one it is. Okay? All of our ways of prevention still allow it to still protect us. So if we keep these up, no matter what the variant, we'll be safe for now. All right, so we're ready for the next poll, if we can pull that up. So I'm going to talk a little bit about vaccines. So my first question is, are you going to get the vaccine? And you can choose one. And the answers are yes, as soon as possible. Maybe I'll wait and see what happens, or no, I'm going to delay as long as possible. I don't know if anybody wants to say or anything here in the room, but we're getting lots of answers coming in on the poll. I hear a yes coming from the crowd. So some people are excited. Mm-hmm. Oh, Shelley, I think there's a question online. If you could read it, or a comment.
Okay, Peter. Good morning, everyone. So the comment, so if the vaccine cannot prevent someone from contracting the virus, then why take it? I understand that the CDC director is now suggesting the wearing of as much as 3 masks at a time. Please enlighten us.
That is a great comment and a great question. The first part I will be answering about when not to take or why to take the vaccine, even if it may not be as effective. Excuse me. And we're going to talk more about the use of PPE specifically. So that's coming up. That's a great question. Keep them coming, and we'll address them both in just a minute. So we can probably end that poll and move to the next.
Peter, do you see the results?
Yes.
Do you want me to stop sharing the results?
Oh, I guess I could say. So the slight majority are saying maybe, with about 45%, and 34% are saying yes. So a good number of people are leaning towards the yes, with 23% saying no, they're going to delay as long as possible. Go ahead with the next one.
Oh, Peter, we do have another question. If the recovery rate is high, what is the purpose of taking the vaccine?
Okay, also a great question. I will roll that in when I talk about why to take the vaccine with the different variants. So that's a good question.
And as for your poll question, you would have to ask that, because this is what is going to be an open-ended question. Wouldn't be as a
it doesn't do the open-ended. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I tried to do one with a that the poll doesn't allow us to do. So we'll just move on. So you can stop sharing that.
It should have stopped.
Oh. Can you pop it off? Maybe we can get it off here.
Has it stopped, Peter?
No, it's still, oh, there it goes. Okay. So I wanted to talk just briefly about how the vaccines are developed. So right now there are 73, it's actually probably gone up a few, vaccines that are currently in clinical development. Can't do all of this at once. Okay. And they are trying for World Health Organization, the WHO emergency use list. And that means that they are assessing the suitability of novel health products during a public health crisis. And they want to make medicines, vaccines, and diagnostics available as rapidly as possible to address the emergency while adhering to stringent criteria for safety, efficacy, and quality. Okay? They're not just throwing out whatever is there. They're doing very carefully. They're looking at the safety, the efficacy, and the quality. The diagnostics for COVID-19, nobody went crazy about that. That was out within weeks because of how quickly they had been able to characterize the virus. So we're at a point scientifically that we can do some of these things very quickly, but it's not at the expense of safety, efficacy, or quality. In addition to the WHO use list, many countries have approved vaccines for their country. Last week in the news, we heard that the FDA, I think, approved another vaccine in the U.S. It's on the list for the WHO. They may get approval very quickly. Cuba has done one. India has done one. Russia has done multiple. Mexico. These countries have approved their own, and those are on the list for the WHO. And hopefully, we'll be able to see them coming in, coming with more approvals quickly. So currently, there's 3. I'm sure you've heard in the news. There's one by Pfizer Biotech, and then there's 2 from AstraZeneca. There's 2 types. And then a lot of countries here in the region have already started rolling out. We've seen across the region, a lot of countries are doing that. Okay. So to have full efficacy, we want to make sure that you take the recommended number of doses. So to this point, it's been 2 doses. So you don't get just one and figure it's enough. If it's a vaccine that requires 2 doses, you get 2 doses. The new one that's coming out of the US, that's actually a 1 dose. So as that gets approved and gets circulated, that may change. Make sure you're talking to your medical provider and you know what you're getting, okay? The reason that we do the vaccine is it provides protection from developing severe symptoms, okay? It does not stop necessarily the transmission of the virus. Some do, some may. However, that's not necessarily the case for all of them. And so that's why we recommend to take them even if you're a low risk, okay? And like we said, the protection may vary depending on the variant of the virus in your region. Okay, so there were 4. I was gonna try and hit all of these. These are claims that people not claims. These are the fears that people have, and the reservations are realistic. And there's nothing wrong with having that reservation. All those people that said maybe or no, I understand that. Even I've had some reservations and been a little unsure of some of them. But let's go ahead with that first one with the claim that it's too fast. Okay. So this is a little graph to show the standard way that vaccines are done, okay? And what I want you to know is the stepwise process. There's reasons for that. It's often stepwise because at any point you could have an event that makes it stop, that you find it's not effective enough. And so nobody wants to spend all the money to start on phase 3 while we're still back on phase 2. And nobody wants to spend money on large scale production while we're still figuring out if it's clinically viable. Okay? But when you go on to what we're doing for this COVID vaccine, we've put those less end to end, and we're doing it more together. We're doing those steps together. Especially if you look at, so the clinical trials, we started them, and then as it seemed safe, we started the next stage, and we started the next stage. It didn't mean that they weren't done. It didn't mean that the safety would not have at any point stopped it if it was showing unsafe, but it allowed us to do it together. And then because they were willing to sink so much money into it, because it was so important, they went with large scale production before they even had approval, right? So instead of waiting until they were done, until it was all approved to start production, they started it long before that so that it would be ready. And once they have production, bam, it's out to everybody as quickly as possible. Okay, these are some things that allowed us to shorten that timeline. This is not the first coronavirus. There's a number that have also affected us. Thank you. So we know coronaviruses, we're able to characterize them well. We already know how vaccines work. We've been doing this since long before the 1900s. We've been doing it since the 1700s. And so our understanding, of course, builds on the last one. And so we're able to do these quickly. We're able to do the science of it quickly. Also, just a large amount of funding. This is where a lot of money has gone in a lot of ways. And so that's allowed us to do it quickly. And it's given priority over other things. Okay. So instead of often when a vaccine is developed or other medicine is developed, the WHO, you just go into the waiting line. But you don't have to. We haven't done that for COVID vaccines. We've said right away, okay, we're just going to go ahead and move them right to the beginning of the line. And again, it wasn't shortened at the expense of safety or effectiveness. So let's go to claim to not act effective for all variants. That one's come up. That one's popped up a little bit. So we've heard that, and I've said that a little bit. So yes, it's true. It's not effective for all the variants. But remember that as we look at that map, not all variants are everywhere. Okay, we haven't seen the South African variant here, and so at this point, that's not the biggest worry. Okay. Same with the Brazil variant. That may or may not come to our region, and it may or may not get to Europe. And so the people in Europe don't have to worry about whether that protects them at the same level. And it's not that it gives no protection, it gives slightly reduced protection. And so I would say a little bit of protection is better than no protection at all. We're constantly researching, they're constantly improving the vaccines. And so these little variants that pop up, they're working on making sure that it is going to be more effective. Okay. And it's just like I want to point out that it's like the flu vaccine as well. Your annual flu vaccine doesn't cover every strain of the flu. Okay. It covers the ones that they think are most prevalent to your region, and it could vary by region. And so that's not a new thing to us. Okay? It may be a new understanding to a lot of people, but we know that not everything is always present in all regions. And so we're constantly watching that. Okay, so go ahead and claim that it will make me infertile, and then we'll wrap it up here. Okay, so this is one that I've heard a lot. And I wanted to just bring it up quickly to say that it's false. It's not true. This is what we hear with nearly every vaccine that comes out. We hear it with all the vaccines that have been coming from the polio vaccine. We still hear that in the regions where it's still out. It's not true. It can't have any impact on fertility or women, okay, men or women. And the vaccine does not change your DNA. That's just not how it works, okay? And I want to encourage you, I bring that up specifically because I want to encourage you to make sure that you're getting your information from a credible source, okay? Hearing it from your crazy cousin Willie at the Christmas party is not a credible source, okay? It's okay if you hear that and you say, I wonder if that's true. And then you look it up, okay? Verify before you share it. Look for that information, either CARFA, WHO, or PAHO, okay? Or your individual ministries of health too, okay? Don't just share it. Don't just say, well, I heard that, it's going to make me grow a third arm. Don't just share that gives people extra anxiety. Find out. Look for good information and ask questions at things like this as well, and other forums. I want to highlight this to everybody. This is a survey that CARFA has put out recently. We would like everybody in all of the countries, everybody can participate. Please click the link. I think Shelley can put that in the chat for everybody to find. And anybody here, I'll help you get the link so you're able to take it. This is a survey to understand better why people have hesitancies, why people say the no and the yes and the maybes. It helps us to make better communication materials for you so that we can better answer those questions that you have and address those reservations that you have. All right, so we're at the questions time. I'll take a few at this time, and then we'll continue to answer questions online as things go. So I want to hit first if there's any questions here in the room, and then we can address the ones that are coming in online as they continue to come in. Is there anything that you guys here feel? Anybody? It could be, okay, we have one in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, do you know of any side effects of the vaccine?
Yes, there are side effects.
And what are they, please?
So can you put up my slide again? So this is one I had to skip a little bit for time, and we'll see if we can get it up quickly. There are two things that I want you to know the difference of. There's side effects, and then there's adverse events, okay? Side effects are pretty much the same as the flu vaccine, okay? You start to, maybe you get a little fever, you have a little headache, and then, but usually that goes off by a couple of days, or taking a little bit of paracetamol is the common one here. I take Advil. And then, okay. Okay. Yeah, go to don't know what will do with me. So, and then there's adverse events, okay? Adverse events are serious problems that you may have, okay? And so, like I said, the side effects are like your flu vaccine. They're fairly mild, and they go off in a day. The adverse events are truly of concern, was what I want to say. If you have severe allergies, okay, you want to let your doctor know about that. I think you've probably heard that some, but if people have allergies, normal allergies, it's not going to likely to be a problem. If you have severe allergies, it may. If you have allergies to other vaccines, if you've had a reaction before, you should let your health provider know. Okay, any of these, if you have fever, if you have a compromised immune system, bleeding disorders, pregnant or may become pregnant in the coming weeks. Excuse me. So all of these, right? Well, you could become pregnant between the vaccines if it's 2 doses, and so you want to let your doctor know. Okay, I tested positive. I took the test at home and I'm positive for I may be pregnant. Does that impact? You want to let your doctor know to make sure that you don't have adverse events, which are possible. Okay, and one more question.
Yes, so if dealing with the variants, it's just the same way as dealing with the first phase of the virus. Why is it still so important and still cause for concern for dealing from it from a PPE aspect or from a personal aspect? Why is it still so important and still a cause for concern if you're dealing with it the same way as washing hands, cleaning surfaces, and so forth?
That's a great question. 2 main reasons. First of all, because some of them have been a little more deadly and a little bit easier to infect other people. And so we want to make sure that we're following those things, but also because people have proven pretty terrible at following these guidelines. And I don't mean that to be judgmental on you or you in internet land. I'm not always that good at it either. I run to the kitchen at work without putting on my mask or without using the hand sanitizer all the time. And you know, we all joke and we put our arm over our mouth, but because none of these is 100% effective, especially when we don't do them all correctly. And so it's still important to make sure that we're doing these right things. And that's why we didn't just say it once back in May or March. It's not the only time you've heard about it. That's why it's a consistent message, because we want to make sure that people are remembering to do it right over and over again until we're out of it. Okay, so I want to cut that there. I know there were lots of good questions coming in online. We're going to continue to answer those online, and if there's time at the end, we'll open that back up and we'll try to address some more by voice. And I'm going to hand over to Sasha, who's going to talk to you about use of PPE.
Thank you very much, Peter, for taking us through that important first session. Based on the questions that we've had in the room as well as online, I'm glad that you're already thinking about what this next phase of dealing with the pandemic is bringing to all of us. And so I will try to address, and if I forget, Shelley, a prompt for me to address the double masking or triple masking question that was in the chat earlier on. And I just want to reiterate what Pete was saying earlier with respect to why take the vaccine if we still have to do all of these measures. Well, we know that the vaccine can help to reduce the severity of the disease if you get it after taking the vaccine. 2, we're still getting information, the evidence coming in with respect to you are protected, but does that prevent you from shedding the virus to others? And so while we get the vaccine and we're protected, we need to ensure that we're protecting the others that we are in contact with. Hence, we need to wear the PPE, but we also have to do it in collaboration with all the other measures we've spoken about. Yes? So we move on, and it's interesting that I think everyone now walks with their own hand sanitizer. Yeah. And Pete was just asking me if I needed any hand sanitizer. I'm like, oh, I actually have it in my little bag of tricks here. Right. So we're all learning how to do our personal measures, not only with putting on the mask, or maybe in your job, you need to wear gloves for some tasks that we didn't have before to do. So we are rolling. Okay, great. So the learning objectives for this session, and mainly for the entire program, is to be able to list the factors that influence the personal protective equipment selection. It's interesting to me that as someone who trains in the use of PPE, this is something that mainly laboratorians would use on a day-to-day basis. Now everyone has to use it. So things that, used to be considered specialized, it's now become the norm. Identify the various types of masks and respirators, because we know that the way the virus is transmitted, we need to be protecting our respiratory surfaces, okay? Basically our heads, right? Entry via the head, via our noses and mouth, okay? Our eyes as well. That's something that we tend to forget. And that's why in some instances, your activities may call for the use of a face shield in addition to the mask. Understand how respirators function. And so we thought this is important. I think a lot of people know more now, but to remind us of how they function, and so why it's all right to use a cloth mask in some situations versus a surgical mask. And then, of course, the N95 mask. Everyone knows what an N95 mask is. Everybody wants to wear one. Yes, until you actually wear one. And then you don't want to wear it again. Okay. We are also going to demonstrate how to use and remove a pair of gloves. By now, everyone is an expert at this. But because we're experts at this, we tend to forget to do the correct thing each and every time and to demonstrate how to use and remove the various types of masks. For this one, it's going to be mainly the N95 mask, because I understand that some of the officers and officers would be using these types of masks in their day-to-day activities. So what is personal protective equipment? Basically, it protects me, the wearer, the user, okay? And in so doing, some of what I wear not only protects me, but by me wearing, for instance, the mask, it also protects the persons around me. What's important is that the use of all of this different type of PPE is only as good as how it fits the person and how we wear it. So we were talking about how we wear masks, and you know, we have the hammocks. The hammock is a term now, right? You wear it below the nose, under the chin. Yeah. And I'm sure some people are hammocking around the place online right now, especially if you have sufficient physical distance between you and your colleagues. So this picture is really to show that in law enforcement, you're already accustomed to wearing appropriate personal protective equipment in your routine and daily activities. For those of you who are doing the beats on the street, etc., and in Trinidad particularly, seen you wearing your appropriate PPE. I've actually seen some officers who've taken this course in May and July as well, and I hail them out and sometimes say, oh yeah, you're the person from CARFA. And they are in fact wearing the appropriate PPE. Okay. So Pete spoke about an ounce of prevention. And so I wanted to introduce this aspect of it. PPE is but one type of measure that we have in our arsenal of measures to use. Okay. And we apply this concept in everything that we do in life. And so one that we may be familiar with is a concept that we apply to streets. So when we have an issue, we want to be able to first try to eliminate or remove the hazard that's bothering us. But sometimes that's not always possible. So we use what's called the hierarchy of control measures. And so we go through this list. We try to substitute to replace the hazard. We try to put in engineering controls, right? Physical things to probably isolate us or remove us from the hazard. We change the different processes, or we implement processes to help us better work around the hazard. And then finally, we also use PPE. So question for persons in the room. Which is the best thing to do in terms of this hierarchy of control measures? Which would be your first bet? What would be your go-to? PPE? Yeah, go ahead. Can you use your mic? When you're dealing with the situation, yeah.
I think the process change the behavior.
Changing behavior. Right. We always think of protect myself, or how can we as people change around in the situation. We generally don't think about engineering controls, or even can we actually get rid of this thing altogether? All right. So with the concept applying to streets that we know about, if we see that if we have a particular street where we notice there's a high rate of pedestrians being knocked down, right? We say, well, first, if we use these types of measures, elimination, well, we could just ban all cars. But that might be a key street that's leading into an area of commercial activity. So you don't want that. You want the cars to go so that you can get to the commercial businesses. So they said, well, maybe we could substitute something in that street to be able to reduce the number of accidents that are taking place and affecting the pedestrians. They said, well, okay, we're going to have a walking lane, or we're going to allow only biking or transit vehicles on that street. So that might work for a while, and that could reduce the number of persons being knocked down by these vehicles on this street. Okay, you find that people are still getting knocked down by bikers. So you say, well, in addition to that, we're going to have to put up curbs, the bollards, which are like the barriers, to further reduce the risk to these persons that are using this particular street. And in addition, you want to add signs to remind the bikers or whoever using, machines to move around, not to hit the pedestrians. And for the pedestrians to know, use the zebra crossing. You also want to have your police officers, right? Traffic officers available to enforce, ensure persons are doing the correct thing, because we're seeking to change behavior. But then also, you can have something where persons are wearing helmets or high visibility jackets. Yes, so we see this in the construction sector. And this is a new part, shame flags. They actually have flags in some cities. If a person does a bad thing, they wave a flag, which is kind of interesting and odd in our context, I believe. But this is to show that these things here are PPE. Yeah, so that's just a simple non-medical example. But what has to happen for all of this to be successful to reduce persons being affected or being knocked down? We have to have a combination of these things. Yes, in and of themselves, each one can work to a certain point, but if we implement parts of all of these, then we would see a definite reduction in the risk to users on that street. So therefore, in the context of COVID-19 now, we know already, can we physically remove the hazard? Well, in May and July when we did this course, there was no vaccine or cure available. And as from Pete's presentation, even though vaccines are available, we're still at an early stage where it's not really eliminated. We're still learning about the longevity of the protection that the vaccines offer us. And it may be that these vaccines will not be 100% in protecting us from getting the virus at all. So therefore, we can't eliminate this virus, okay? And of course, it's improving its ability to survive. It's changing, okay? Can we substitute this virus? No, we're dealing with this particular entity. And in fact, it's in the variants, in the emergence of the variants, it's in itself causing a substitution, not in a positive way for us, but in a negative way, because some of the variants are becoming more virulent. So what are some of the things that we have done? We're all familiar with these. In terms of the engineering controls that have been put in place, this may be what is commonplace now in your own workspaces. We now have plexiglass dividers. We have markers on floors. We have markers here as well. We were told where to stand, how far to stand from each other as well, to ensure that we're maintaining physical distancing spaces. In terms of the administrative controls, changing the way we work and our behaviors as well, appointment systems. Before we may have operated on first come, first serve. Now we've changed to using appointment systems. Every time you go into a place, before you do anything else, it has now become a norm. Please wash your hands, or please use the hand sanitizers. And we know the facilities that are in it for the long haul, because you've already installed wash basins at the beginning or the doors to your offices or your buildings. Yes, and of course, really, I would say security officials in many different businesses now are more aware of persons coming into business places and saying, okay, please drift back. Please remember the sign there. We can't take any more. So persons are very much more conscious about social distancing. And I want to say physical distancing, because for me, social distancing, we are social creatures. And that's why we have the circulation of the virus continuing going on, okay? And so we have to come to an equilibrium dealing with the virus. That's why, remember that ounce of prevention, PPE is but one of the measures, one of the components that are going to help us to get there. And of course, we talk about face shields, masks, gloves, gowns, and shoe covers. I believe that, is this one where it's coming up? Or probably 2 slides in again. What I want to draw your attention to is that PPE is at the bottom of this pyramid of measures. And it's actually the least, even though there's a lot of emphasis placed on it, it's the least effective way of reducing or eliminating exposure to the virus and to any virus that we may come into contact with. And that's why it's important that we have this combination approach. That's why even with the vaccine, until that term herd immunity is achieved, we have to continue doing all the measures that we've been doing all along. Okay? So, right. This is the first poll that we have for you. Which of the following protective measures do you now use when interacting with the public? And here you can have multiple answers. So I'm going to read it out. I'm going to read out the options for participants in the room. You can probably give me your feedback as well. So we have plexiglass or shields or barriers, using an appointment system, the use of N95 respirators, or surgical masks or non-medical masks. We have a variety of masks even here in the room. The use of gloves and the use of gowns. Well, I know here the office definitely uses the plexiglass shield. I don't know if that was always in place. No, it wasn't, right? So that's an engineering control that's been put in place. So interesting, reliance on masks. And I think that is also based on some of the national legislation or measures that have been taken from national authorities across the region, where now it's mandatory for us to wear masks. Yes? Okay, so there are some persons that also incorporate the use of gowns. And that's interesting for in terms of the law enforcement officers on the call. Okay. So yes. So with this reliance on the use of masks, I hope that we're all using it correctly. Yeah, every time. And we know that after about 20 minutes in of consistently wearing this, particularly the surgical mask, you're like, what's happening here? I was breathing fine when I just put it on. I'm not sick or anything. Why do I feel like I'm clogging up? Yeah. Okay, great. So thanks for that. And it's important to also say that physical barriers are also being used in the appointment system. Some downsides which unrelated to this, of course, our productivity would have gone down a little bit because now where you can just have persons coming in on a first come first serve basis, we've reduced your throughput by having to implement an appointment system. And so we know for sure these are some of the pros and cons that we've been dealing with as a result of the measures being taken. Thank you for your time with that, colleagues online. Okay, so just different PPE that we know that we've seen. And this first picture with these two gentlemen, we usually see that, don't we? Same place, same organization. One has on a surgical mask. Next one has on a neck gaiter. Okay. When we talk about processes and procedures, it's important to have uniformity. Okay. I don't know where they're working, but it might be better for both of them to be wearing the surgical mask instead of this gentleman wearing a neck gaiter. And in terms of types of masks, we'll learn that in terms of the non-medical or cloth masks, these neck gaiters actually offer the least amount of protection. So if you're going to be wearing something like this, it should be in a place, let's say if you're doing highway patrol, you are off to the side, you're not interacting with anyone, or you're not likely to interact with anyone unless you're chasing them down. So hopefully you have your N95 with you, so you could change into if you have to go and interact with a person in the vehicle. But this is not going to offer you much protection if you're going to be up in close quarters with someone. Okay, so this is actually not recommended for use for security officials at all. Yeah, surgical mask is fine. Wanted to point this one out. The masks with the exhalation valves, also not recommended. Anyone in the room want to hazard a guess why? Okay. Any answers online, Shali, for that?
Not at this time, Sasha. I don't see anything.
So the ones with the valves are not recommended because when you exhale, your breath is going out into the atmosphere. So you're protected because you're wearing a mask over your nose. But when you breathe out, you're actually putting those in contact with you at greater risk. Okay? So already, you know, don't buy, or if you see these on offer, say, well, hold up, you know, this isn't going to be offering sufficient protection. Okay. And same thing for these. So N95 masks with the valves are not really recommended for use. The plain N95 masks, those are fine. Oh, thank you. Yes. Yes, Christopher. From exhaling, in terms of PPE, how effective is the application and enforcement of laws? That's a good question. All right. And I guess that is something that is up for research and debate. And we can probably get some feedback in the chat. I think that's a good discussion point for persons in the chat to share their experience with what's happening in your own country. Because yes, there are freedoms, and we also do have a collective responsibility to each other too. Yeah, so that's why we have to keep educating each other and educating others so that we're all on the same page, and so we understand why taking these measures are important, not only for other persons, but for ourselves and our families, our communities. I think we have to really consider that. So factors influencing PPE selection. So while we would love to dress up in an N95 mask, a face shield, a wraparound gown, like we see the people in CDC and so on doing, that's not going to be very applicable to our day-to-day activities. Okay, and if you're in immigration, Joycelyn, we have immigration on this morning or this afternoon? This afternoon. Okay, I'll save that one. We have prisons on today. Okay, prison officers, I'm speaking to you. So you would know that in some blocks, you may have an area that's designated for dealing with COVID-19 positive inmates. And so your duties may require you, your activities require you to actually dress that way. And of course, I'm sure you have proper procedures in place when you exit that part of the block, that you'll be removing those PPE so you don't contaminate. Oh, and immigration is present. Okay, thank you. So yes, so you have to remove your PPE before you go to another section of the prison. And for immigration, I don't know, maybe officers that are online would like to tell us whether or not, I'm not sure that all immigration officers have the same level of PPE protection, because if you're public facing, I'm sure that there are extra layers of PPE that you're wearing versus those that are in the back doing office or desk duty. Okay, and we all agree with that, yeah? Depending on the type of activity you're doing, you have to be able to do a risk assessment to determine what is the level of protection that you need for conducting that activity safely and securely. Yeah, especially, and I think that has been the one bonus with the security field, that you're already oriented in a way that requires you to think strategically and logically about the type of measures that you have to take to protect yourself and others around you. Okay, so in terms of the type of exposure that's being anticipated, so these are factors. Are you interacting with the general public or persons coming back from repatriation flights or visitors coming in versus a suspect on the street or having to do a home raid? And do you know whether these persons are COVID-19 positive? Do you know where they've been? Okay, especially in the national community. For persons that are dealing at border ports of entries, you have at least a piece of evidence that the individuals you're dealing with have tested negative within the last 72 hours. But we also know, if you read the papers, when they have to report the dashboards, they say, oh, 3 new cases and 1 was recently repatriated or 1 is an imported case. So that means that even though there's that requirement, persons may be sick and not know it even though they've taken the test. Okay? So another reason why we cannot let down our own guard. And of course, are you able to maintain the physical distancing requirements? At least 2 meters, 6 feet apart. We saw earlier that is the most difficult thing to maintain versus close contact and number of persons in a space. Not a factor which is important, the durability of the PPE that you have available to you and how appropriate it is for the task at hand. All right. There have been an explosion of different types of PPE. You have the masks with the face shield built into it, or we've had an influx of the N95 masks as well. And so for me, those work just as well as a surgical mask, but not so much as a respirator. Yeah. And of course, fit. So face protection. What do masks protect? Say it with me loud and clear. Yes, both our noses and our mouths. Not the mouth alone. All right, not the, well, we don't usually see this, but not the nose alone, it's both. So your mask should go up over your nose and down under your chin. Okay, no hammocks under the chin. It's not a chin guard, right? So even though I do agree it's difficult now that you have the plexi barrier and people are saying things, you're like, what? And then you have the tendency to do, pull it down to hear better, right? I know you people online have been doing that too. Don't worry. You feel as if you can only hear better when you pull the mask down. Right? Whereas goggles protect our eyes, and this is important because the virus is transmitted through membranes. So not just the nasal membranes or the mouth, but also our eyes. Okay, so where you have very close contact, I mean, you're definitely going to be dealing with persons who are COVID-19 positive, need to ensure that you're protecting, as I said earlier, your entire head, right? All openings. So goggles should fit snugly over and around your eyes, but guess what? Personal glasses are not a substitute for the use of goggles where you're dealing with these patients, where you're dealing with persons, okay, in close quarters. However, while we would love to have this on all our glasses, I think there's probably a market for this now that we have to wear masks. An anti-fog feature improves clarity for these goggles, especially now that we're all wearing the masks. Yeah, that's also for face shields. And I believe that there are certain companies that sell an anti-fogger for spectacles as well. So if you tend to fog up every time you put on your mask, you can also look at that. So face shields protect the face, the nose, the mouth, and the eyes. That's why it's been used as a complementary PPE for persons who really cannot wear a mask. Yeah. and that's the N95 mask or the respirators. All of us can, in fact, wear a cloth mask or a non-medical mask. Okay, it's simply acting as a barrier. It's not restricting or breathing. And again, we need to ensure that the type of PPE we're wearing is covering the appropriate parts of our body. So face shield should cover the forehead, extend below the chin, and wrap around the side of the face. So think about the persons who are dealing with the patients in those isolation facilities. A lot of them are wearing the respirators. In some instances, they're wearing goggles and a face shield in addition to their body suits, their wraparound gowns, and multiple layers of gloves as well. Not a very comfortable way to work at all. So we're all familiar, and this is to reinforce what we already know about masks here, right? So you know about face protection, we have the non-medical face masks or the community masks. And this is what I would say for persons working in the security field. If you're in an office setting that does not interact with the public and you've instituted other measures, rotation, appointment systems, other aspects to the plexiglass barriers when dealing with the public or others, you know, your cubicles. There's some offices you see everybody online. You never see a person face to face, even if you might be in the office next to them, things like that. It's really weird now working like that. Non-medical face masks are fine. Yes? Then you have the medical face mask or the surgical mask or procedure mask. Again, these are disposed. So the advantage of the cloth mask is that you can reuse it. Yeah, make sure that you wash your cloth mask. I'm not going to ask, but think about how often you wash your mask. How often do we wash our cloth masks? No one answer that online, please. I don't think we want to know the answer to that. But I will say it should be more frequently than we do. Okay? And so this is to remind us that when we use our mask at the end of the day, we need to put it to wash. Okay? And I know some, particularly for the ladies, you have a mask that matches every outfit. Good for you. That means that you're definitely changing out your masks and washing them before re-wearing it at another time. Okay? The medical face masks or the surgical masks are meant to be disposable. If you're not dealing in close quarters with persons, and you have additional protection, a plexiglass divider, and your tasks don't require you to interact directly, this might be a good option for use in your space and for your tasks. Again, risk assessment based on the activity that you're doing. Here, it's protecting the wearer from large droplets, splashes, and sprays. So therefore, it controls the spread of droplets from the person wearing the mask, and it protects not only you, the wearer, but it's protecting persons that you're in contact with. Question, not to be answered, because I don't think we really want to know the answer to this, but personal reflection. How often do you throw away your mask? After how many uses? It's supposed to be disposable. Yes, it's meant to be disposable. It's not meant to be washed and reworn. Okay? It's not meant to be used for an entire day and then, put into the Ziploc bag and then reworn the next day. Okay? It's disposable. If, however, you're in a situation where you're able to work without wearing a mask, but like, for instance, driving to work, okay, by yourself. I'm not sure how many people actually wear their mask while driving. I don't. Okay, I drive by myself. I would not wear the mask then, but I have a mask for my vehicle. So every time I need to pop out to go to the grocery or so on, I have a mask in my vehicle. If you're doing something that you're only wearing the surgical mask for a few minutes at a time, throughout the course of the day, it's fine to use the same mask. By the end of the day, or in preparation for the new day, you have to use a different mask. Because remember, we've been breathing in and out all throughout, okay? And when we get to factors that influence fit, we're going to be talking about use of makeup, ladies, lipstick, all of those things. I hope that everyone is making sure that after they eat, they wash their mouths properly, and so you don't have bits of food stuck around your mouth, right? We're carrying all of those things with us while we're wearing these PPE, if we're not doing the correct thing. And then, of course, the respirators. So the respirators offer like the highest protection out of these different types of masks. They're known as filtering face pieces as well. And they're tight fitting. It's a tougher device, and you need to be fit tested to ensure that you're wearing the correct type of mask. Yeah. The correct type of N95 respirator that is fit for your features. Okay, and that's why if you're going to go ahead and use these type of masks, which I believe many of the institutions present have at least identified specific activities where there's cause to use them, you need to ensure that the persons who are going to use these N95 respirators are trained in the use, but that they have been each individually fit tested. So you have to have a selection of N95 respirators because everyone's face is not the same. Yeah. So what might, could you tell me? Right. So what might fit on Troy will definitely not fit on my colleague Cheryl in the back. Yeah. Different face altogether, facial features. So we have to ensure a selection. And then we have to also be aware that some persons may not fit test at all. And so what do we have in place as administrators and managers to ensure that these persons can adequately and properly perform their activities? Okay. So again, it protects the wearer from solid and liquid particles. And so I want to ask you, what type of mask do you wear while on duty? All right. So I know that my colleagues here from Impacts don't face the public, so they wear the cloth masks here. Yeah, and they're all fine. And it's interesting because in the room, we have different types of masks and at least one person wearing a surgical mask as well. And so if you have concerns, you're well within your right to check with your physician to ensure you're wearing the right type of mask for your daily activities as well. So yes. So mainly surgical masks, followed by the non-medical cloth mask. Okay. Well, I'm glad to see not many persons, and I say I'm glad to see not many persons are using the N95 respirators because shows that persons are looking closely at the activities that you're performing to determine what type of mask you need to wear on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Right, so surgical masks for the win. Yes, they're the easiest type after the cloth masks. Based on what we do, I work also in the lab, and so I interact with persons in our laboratory. We do not use the N95 respirator for every single activity. We have done our risk assessment and we've identified the specific tasks of which types of samples, which type of processes we would use for that. But other than that, in our setting, we do use the surgical mask. Yes. Of course, the flip side of this is that we're generating a lot of waste. Yeah. So we have to be careful in terms of how we dispose of these masks. So thanks everyone for that. And I'm glad to see no one online is using the neck gaiter. And if you are, make sure that you've thought through when you would use such a piece of PPE. Well, it's really neck wear, really. It's not really PPE. Oops, sorry. So I just wanted to point out to you in terms of the use of the N95 respirators, there are different types. So for respiratory protection, you have air purifying, non-powered respirators, and that's like the N95 respirator. Basically, you breathe in, you breathe out, and it's going through a filter. We're going to see that on the next slide. You also have powered air purifying respirators, and these are the ones with the battery pack, with the hose that goes into the that goes up your back, and there's like a huge face shield. You might have seen these in movies like Outbreak. You remember that? Yeah. I think everybody kind of watched Outbreak and Contagion in 2020, right? At least once. So these are the ones when they come with the full body suits and they have their entire heads covered and they have the coming down over their shoulders. What they're using, and you're like, why am I seeing their beards, or why am I seeing their faces, their full faces? It's because they're using a powered air purifying type of respirator. So there's a cartridge that fits next to the battery pack here, and that's what's filtering the air coming in from the containment zone so that it's cleansed before it gets into your breathing space. And of course, many of you will be familiar with the gas mask, and there are different cartridges that can be placed there depending on the type of environment that you're entering, especially if you're entering a space that has chemicals. Yeah, different types of chemicals. You have different types of cartridges and filters for that. And so these will, of course, be useful in the same setting as with COVID-19. So if you're going into a building with, let's say for firefighters or so on, their protective equipment that they have already in place, there's obviously there's no additional requirement for PPE there. You have like maximum protection already. That's the atmosphere supplying type of respirator with oxygen tanks. Yeah. So just to say that it's not only the N95 or the surgical mask that we have for respiratory protection, but there are these other types that can be used when based on the situation. So how do these respirators and the N95 mask work? Well, when you breathe in, the mask itself, it's basically a filter. So it filters the air. So by inhaling, you create a negative pressure which pulls the air in through that matrix, and so the air is cleansed. On days that have particularly bad Sahara dust, if you've ever had to wear an N95 mask outside, or when you're dealing with sawdust shavings or so and you have to wear an N95 mask, you'll actually see the particles stuck on the outside of the mask after about 20-25 minutes. Yeah. And so the difference between what we know and what we wear using just a regular breathing, and then the positive pressure air purifying respirator, we have some help with that battery pack. When you switch it on, basically starts the motor, and again, that pulls the air in through the filter, which cleanses the air before it gets into your breathing zone. Yeah. So the difference between a surgical mask and a respirator. The surgical mask does help to protect our nose and mouth, but only from splattered body fluids, large droplets. Okay. A surgical mask is not a respirator because the barrier is not filtering anything before it gets into your breathing space. Okay. You're good with that? All right. Which is why from the early days in the pandemic, we've been saying, please do not use out the N95 respirators. We need to reserve those for use by the healthcare professionals, for the people who are going to be coming into contact on a daily basis with persons who are either positive or unknown. And of course, if you're dealing in that situation, everybody becomes a potential COVID-19 positive person that you're dealing with. Yeah. So again, the respirators filter the air before you inhale it, and you must be fit tested to ensure you're wearing the correct type of respirator. And so with that, before you wear a respirator, you should do an initial review, which is done by filling out a survey. And if there is any concern with any condition that you may have in terms of a respiratory condition, it's really recommended that you get a medical opinion before you wear a respirator on the job. Okay? We don't want people wearing in a respirator and you're like really having a conversation with them and they're getting out of breath. Okay? And so this evaluation needs to be done before conducting a fit test. And there are two methods. You can either do a qualitative fit test or a quantitative fit test. The qualitative fit test is right. The qualitative fit test is more accessible by institutions, by agencies. And this, you put on the respirator and they spray a chemical. It's either like a salt solution or a bitter solution. So they go through a series of steps and they ask you, can you taste it? So if you can taste it, then you failed. You're not supposed to be able to taste it if the mask is fitted properly. And then there's a quantitative fit test kit, which is far more expensive, but you're hooked up to the machine and it basically measures a differential between ambient air and the way you're breathing. And so you go through a range of motions that you would normally do while wearing a mask, bending over, speaking loudly, things like that. And it would tell you whether or not the mask is properly fitted to your features as well. And so this is very clear. It's objective. It tells you right away, yes, you've passed or no, you failed. All right. The qualitative one is very subjective though, because you might say, did I taste it? Or did I have lunch 29 minutes ago when they said don't have anything to eat within 30 minutes of taking the test? All right. But either way, if you're going to wear N95 respirator, your job is asking, or it has been determined that for your tasks, you have to wear N95 mask or respirator. All persons should be fit tested before being asked to wear that as much as possible. Because then it's just as good as anything else. Might as well be wearing a surgical mask, which does not require the use of a fit test, or just a regular cloth mask. It would offer you the same level of protection because you're not sure if you're being fully protected or not. Okay. And so even if many of us are not wearing respirators, just a regular mask that we're wearing, all of them are difficult to wear over long periods of time, right? But in the case of the respirators, the materials can degrade and lose their protective properties over time. So the longer you wear that mask, remember you're breathing in and out and it's filtering. What's happening is that the particles it's drawing out of the air is getting caught up on the surface and reducing the effectiveness of the mask altogether. Okay. As we said, effectiveness is highly dependent on how it fits your face. And gentlemen, I love to see the gentlemen wearing the N95 respirators with the beards and all of that. So for these respirators to work, you need to be clean shaven. That's the best way to do it. Because if you're using it with facial hair, it will cause a gap between your skin and the seal that the mask needs. Okay, so might as well not be wearing anything. However, I think the one with the beard is on the next slide. So factors, so facial hair, weight loss or weight gain, something we don't like to talk about, but yes. If you're really thin and you're wearing one type of mask and then you gain a lot of pounds because you've just been eating because there's nothing else to do, then you need to check yourself and make sure that your mask is still fitting you properly. Okay, you may need to change the type of mask that you're wearing to accommodate. You might need to go up a size, as many of us have over the last year. So wrinkles, scars, acne, makeup, seems as if it's just geared to us women. All of these things are going to affect the seal so that it reduces the ability of the mask, the respirator, to properly protect us. Your facial structure, we mentioned, and dentures. So persons with dentures, if you wear your dentures, sometimes, and then you don't wear your dentures other times. It's going to affect how that mask fits on your face. So it's important, particularly we may not have the ability to deal with the wrinkles, maybe the scars, but definitely the makeup. So it's not recommended to wear makeup while using the N95 masks. And I do fit testing. And ladies, I tell the ladies, okay, these are the things that you have to make sure to follow before you come to test. On the first test, fail. So ask, are you by chance wearing foundation? I mean, it looks really good. Oh yes, I forgot. I didn't think that the kit would pick that up. Yes, it's very sensitive. So I have to explain again. There's a little gap between that's created from the foundation on your skin and the seals from the mask. So it's going to affect that. You're not going to be protected. So gentlemen, I spoke about the facial hair. CDC has a nice visual as to what you can have if you need to wear an N95 respirator. So they show here clean shaven is best. And they have a number of different things like, soul patch, side whiskers, the pencil, the toothbrush. Some of you would be more familiar with these terms than I am. Okay, we have a whole chart to choose from. So, just time checking here. Before using an N95 respirator, there are certain things that we need to do. Need to check to make sure that it hasn't expired. Need to check and make sure that you've checked for cracks, tears in the material itself. Because it uses elastic straps, there's something called fatiguing. And we know this with rubber bands, right? Some of us love to collect rubber bands. And then you 20 years later, you decide, oh yes, I have rubber bands for that. And you go and they just snap on you. Okay, so that's called fatiguing. And for PPE that we buy bulks of and we put down and we go to use several years later, this is something key that we need to ensure, especially for emergency response. We tend to pull out supplies, after a couple of years instead of really checking them ever so often. Where you're using respirators that have those filters, you need to ensure that they're properly seated in the gasket and that they're still in good condition. And note when last it was changed, because these are things that you can change out. Okay. So we are going to show you how to perform this seal check. I just wanted to know, did I have another one coming up? We're going to come back to this slide afterwards when we do the demonstration, right, Candy? So just letting you know. But whenever you put on an N95 respirator, before proceeding to your task or activity, you need to perform a seal check. We're going to do this, which is basically putting your hands over the mask and inhaling sharply. You should feel a slight collapse around this area if it's working properly. When you breathe out, if it's not seated properly on your face, you're actually going to feel it coming out through the sides. For me, if I'm not using a proper one, I'd feel it to the bottom coming out. Right, here it is. So another poll to ensure people are still with us. What are some of the issues that you have wearing PPE? Or wearing a respirator where you do wear a respirator? Yes. I have remembering not to touch. So this applies to all masks, okay? When you put a mask on, we're not really supposed to be touching the front. Yeah? All the adjustments we make through the day while we're using it. We're not really supposed to be doing that. It's defeating the purpose. Because if we're saying that we're using it to protect us, all right, where are all those spatters and things going that we can't see? It's going on the front of the mask. Okay, and that's why we're going to show you how to remove the mask properly. And I hope that we would start to use the correct way of taking off the mask by the straps only. Great. So yes, respirators are notoriously difficult to breathe in. And as we said, as you wear the respirator over a period of time, it's cleansing the air. And by extension, it's becoming loaded with the contaminants from the air. whether it's the virus or whether it's anything else, dust particles. It's basically going to be the dust particles in the air that's going to start to reduce the effectiveness of your respirator. And so that's why you need to not use it after. If you get to that point, you have to change it. Okay, remembering not to touch. So thanks for that honesty there. And removal, yes, remembering where to use the straps. So right. So the first thing we need to do when we're gonna use our mask, make sure that we perform our hand hygiene first. Yes, I think everybody has their little pocket hand sanitizer. And of course, whether using super water or the alcohol-based rub, make sure that we do this both before we put on the mask as well as after we remove it. When we're holding any type of face mask, make sure that we're only holding it by the straps. Never the front of the mask, never the inside of the mask. Okay, so I'll ask and invite you to try to remember that. And we say only wear the mask for tasks and activities which require its use. And I think everyone can agree with that. We don't want to be in the mask more than we have to be. Okay. When we're removing the mask, again, we need to hold it by the straps. Okay. Of course, when if you're using the single-use mask, please, when we're disposing it in the bins, please just don't throw it in the bin like that. Make sure we wrap it up in some tissue before we put it in the bin. Okay, because people may have to handle that. If you're using a cloth mask and you're going to use it at another time, a lot of us have our little bags, or little baggies now in our handbags or in the cars that we put our masks into, where it is possible to reuse the mask for a couple more times during the day. Put it in your sealable bag before you use it again. Okay, so I'll talk about the double masking here now. So we saw that particularly in the US, they've taken a move towards double masking, and I heard this morning there's a call for triple masking. We have to recall that the situation, we have to take it based on the situation in our own settings, in our own communities, to determine whether or not that would be an appropriate measure to go to. As it is, with the use of a single mask, have we continued to see an increase in cases, or has it been contained? Are the number of cases being identified going down, right? In our own institutions, are we seeing an explosion of cases despite having all the measures in place and having 100% compliance of all the measures, or not? So we have to ask ourselves these questions. At this time, CARFA is not going to say yes or no to double masking. It has to be up to the user, the individual user, to determine the level of safety that you feel in a situation. Okay? But this is, of course, now taking into consideration all the positive and negative things we've said about wearing the masks. Yeah, so if it's already difficult for us to breathe in, right, do we want to add another layer to it? However, what I want to point out is that you can improve the way your mask fits you, particularly for the non-medical mask, so the surgical mask or the cloth mask with the loops, by knotting and tucking the loops in. Okay, that can improve the fit of your mask. So that should help to create a tighter seal. And that's why in the beginning, some of us would have bought several different masks and realized this is not fitting. This one is too low. This one is too high up on my chin. And now we've gotten to a point where we know what works for us, what's covering us properly. So again, face masks are a complementary measure. They do not replace the recommended preventive measures that Pete spoke about, hand hygiene or cough and sneeze etiquette, the physical distancing, and please avoid touching our faces, because the root of getting into our bodies lies on our face, okay? Our mouth, our noses, our eyes, mainly. So additional considerations here. We said make sure that if you can, go makeup free. Because of course, all of these things will soil the inside of your mask and reduce how long you can use it for, ladies. Large dangling earrings as well may make it more difficult when you're putting on your mask and taking it off. Not things for the gentlemen to be too concerned about. But for all of us, if you have long hair, please make sure to tie it back. Yeah. Oops. Aha. So during Pete's time for his presentation, this came up. Do I still need to wear a mask after I take the COVID-19 vaccine? Let's see. And we'll talk about why, yes or no. What do you guys think? You kind of answered why, right? Yeah. Okay. Any other persons want to add there? See that the poll closes in 30 seconds. In the meantime, Shelley, I think there was a question that you said you had.
Okay, there was a question regarding wearing of masks continuously and breathing in carbon dioxide when you exhale without the use of air vents. So is it healthy to continuously wear masks and breathe in carbon dioxide when you exhale without using air? Yeah.
Correct. Okay, yes. So Adrian, it's completely fine. We're not keeping the carbon dioxide in our breathing zone when we breathe out. It's actually coming out. The carbon dioxide is actually being removed from the breathing zone when we breathe out. So we're not keeping it and concentrating it right by our noses. So we shouldn't be having a buildup of CO2, basically. Okay, so it's okay to continuously wear the mask. Of course, if you're getting very uncomfortable, and some people do, you need to take a break. That's fine. You may need to adjust or readjust your mask as well, or change it out completely. And I'm thinking you're speaking here specifically about a respirator, because the surgical mask and the cloth mask don't usually have this problem. Okay, but again, that's why it's important to consult your physician. If you have issues, breathing, respiratory issues, you may be a candidate for wearing a face shield instead. And if that's the case, you would have to ensure you have a letter or something where it's mandatory to wear a mask. Okay, great. So thanks everybody that, yes, you do still need to wear the mask after you take the COVID-19 vaccine. As I said, we're still trying to get enough information about how we know that vaccine would either protect you from getting the virus or reduce the severity of illness if you do get the virus even after taking the vaccine. But we're looking to see, are we shedding the virus after taking the vaccine? There isn't sufficient information about that. Okay. So yes, you do. So for the persons who answered no, we all wish that we didn't have to wear the mask after taking the vaccine. And I hope that there will come the time when they'll say we don't. But for now, we still do need to do that. Right. So in terms of hours wearing a mask, I wouldn't recommend wearing a mask continuously for an entire hour even. If you're doing a task that requires you to be in one place for multiple hours, you need to look at the work process to allow you to take a break, to remove that mask and breathe comfortably if it's becoming an issue in your productivity. Okay, but for most of us, I think we have some flexibility to get up and walk away, take a break. You know, people have the cute idea of, I'll have my cup of tea and I'm drinking or I'm eating, so therefore I have to pull the mask down, right? So you can't eat with a mask on. Okay, next one, let's see. So quite quickly here now, how to use a gown. Many of us aren't going to use a gown in our setting, but you need to, again, make sure that you're selecting the appropriate type of gown and size. So looking at a fluid barrier mainly. Usually the opening is in the back and you secure it at the neck and waist. If the gown is too small, you need to use 2 gowns. The first gown you put on like what we say a lab coat, like the white coats. So you put the ties in the front, and then the second gown has the ties in the back. So they're completely covered. So the back is covered when you put on the first gown, and then the front is covered when you put on the second gown. Yeah? Like that. So a word on glove use. Risk assessment, always the first step. We do not recommend carte blanche use of gloves in any setting. You need to limit opportunities for touch contamination when you're going to use gloves. Gloves are intended really for specific tasks. Remember, we need to protect ourselves and others as well as the environment. When you're wearing gloves, do not touch your face. If you're already having problems touching our face just wearing a mask, a cloth mask, imagine if we have to wear a mask and gloves. And some of you probably shaking your heads, yes, how many times do I, as soon as you put on the mask and the glove, you tend to feel a little tickle here. Only use the gloves when you're going to do the activity that requires the use of the glove, okay? Need to change gloves frequently. Don't use them if they're torn, so you need to change them during use if they become torn or when soiled. Between persons or items, not to put anyone on the spot, but security officials that whose activities include doing checks between different persons. Do you change your gloves from one person to the next person? I know before 2020 that was never done. Okay. So that's something to consider operationally as well as budgetary. Because if it should be that you're changing gloves between persons, because you don't know what they have and you don't know what you've just carried from the previous person to the new person as well. Okay. Make sure again that there's a receptacle for discard of all of this different PPE. So let's say, do you wear gloves? This gentleman? No? Okay. Okay. Okay, prisons. So thanks. I know that there have been protocols that have been developed for the prison setting. And so if you can place your contact information in the chat, Joycelyn, we can definitely share those protocols. I know that a lot of work has been done in trying to address that, and there are some good resources out there as well. Okay, so yes, persons are using gloves. So I'm hoping that this would be useful to you. If you take nothing away, make sure that you're using risk assessment in identifying which activities or tasks that you need to use your gloves for. And also to remember not to use the gloves between persons or belongings. Okay, we need to avoid touch contamination. Okay, so CARFA does not recommend the use of gloves in public, okay? That's our official stance. Especially persons who like to put on gloves and then handle door handles that persons come afterwards to touch with their bare hands. Again, hand hygiene, we need to wash our hands or use alcohol-based hand rub after removing our gloves. I'm all for hand washing. Where possible, I recommend it as a first choice over the hand sanitizer. Only when you don't have the opportunity to do hand washing, then would I say that you definitely need to do your hand sanitizing with your hand rub. Okay, and of course, by now we all know how to wash our hands. Yeah, do you remember how to? Everybody's been doing it, so make sure that you wet your hands first. I don't know how to do this. And if anybody wants to. Thanks. So how do we, if we could all wash our hands, and I'm going to stand on this side, Candy, so that I don't mess up how I'm washing my hands as well. Persons in the room, let's wash our hands. So you wet your hands with the water. You get some soap. We say you rub your hands palm to palm. So, and then we say right palm over the left, dorsum. So on top, then switch sides. Then you do between. Yeah. Then we sing like the choir. Remember being in choir? You hook one side. So you're getting these bits here. You're basically cleaning these bits here when you do that. And then we like to rev the motorbike handles. Get our thumbs nice and good. And then we do the center of the palms to get our fingertips. Okay? Then we wash again. We take our paper towel. Many places have single-use towels now to wipe our hands and then turn off the tap. Not the other way. Sorry? I think they're seeing us in the corner. Yes. So I hope that, after doing it multiple times, it actually becomes part of your daily routine. Yeah. So we mightn't be doing all the steps all the time, but you get used to doing it. Thank you so much. All right. And baby wipes, right? Those with little kids and so on know how important these are. So again, if possible at all, to carry a small bottle of water and liquid soap in your vehicles, that's always a good place to start. It's been good in terms of some of the measures we've taken as countries, that institutions and businesses now have hand washing facilities. Whereas before it wasn't the norm. I think everyone expects it now, and it's quite useful. You have a place to wash your hands. You feel a little cleaner as well when you do that, right? Hand sanitizers need to contain between 60 and 80% of ethanol or isopropanol to be effective. So please read your labels. For those of you who are involved in procurement, make sure that when you're doing your hand sanitizers, that you ensure the concentration of alcohol. Okay. Pete mentioned cleaning a bit in his presentation and how important it is for us to clean our surfaces. And of course, there are lots of information out there. What I want to say is that routine detergents and disinfectants are sufficient to remove and kill the virus that causes COVID-19. Okay? So we don't need to go and buy extra special things. In fact, bleach and water, important. Remember, bleach alone is not effective. What activates the active component in bleach is water. So you have to add it. Okay. So some operational considerations. Where possible, consider the crewing arrangements, physical distancing. Pete mentioned disinfection of vehicles and spaces, especially where crews are sharing the same vehicle. Ensure you focus on your steering wheel, the handbrake, door handles, any equipment that you're going to be using between persons as well. The seat belt, things that you touch, knobs, all of those areas. For persons with shifts, you're using the same cubicle as someone else on a different shift. We need to ensure that part of our protocols include the cleansing and disinfection of those cubicles between shifts before the next shift comes on. AC, this is something that's always a cause for concern in terms of how often air conditioning units are cleaned. The schedule for the maintenance, the preventive maintenance, should be checked. If you find persons, and it should be at least on a quarterly basis. For most units require cleaning on a quarterly basis. But if you have a larger turnover or number of persons coming through, then you may need to revisit that. And of course, be guided. If persons start to fall sick, do not wait. There are certain things that we can do as institutions, and usually the air, especially when it's recirculating, need to ensure that that's being maintained. Okay. So we've spoken about disposal. Again, I would just plug, now that we use a lot of PPE, we need to make sure that we're disposing of it in the containers that are designated for waste. And of course, this implies another operational consideration of having a contract for removal of this type of waste where you have a lot of persons wearing PPE. If you're on mobile patrol, of course, to have a bag available that you can put your waste into. And remember, always perform your hand hygiene. So I'm going to stop there as we go through the summary, because I really want you to be able to look at the demonstration. And at this time, I'm going to ask 2 persons to volunteer for me from in the room. So don't everyone jump up at once. I know persons online would have been here already. While they come up, I just want to say that I want to remind everyone that PPE is just one of the mitigation control measures that needs to be used in combination with all those other measures that we have grown to love and know over this last year. Okay. Great. So we have gender balance here in the room this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, masks should fully cover the nose and the mouth, and the respirators filter the air before we breathe it in. Surgical and cloth masks do not. Okay. I'm not sure how they're going to hear what's going on. Are they going to hear anything? So note, I'm making sure that my hair is tied back, right? What's the first thing we have to do? Do we remember what is the first thing that we have to do when we're going to put on PPE? Right, we're going to do hand sanitizing. Roger, you want to use this one that's already on? So we're going to sanitize. So. Okay, we just leave it. You guys are just going to pause here. You need to take off your mask me afterwards, right?
Take the mask off afterwards. Or what, after I sanitize it?
Yeah. You guys let me know when we can go. Okay, great. So for those of you who are joining us now, we're about to put on some PPE. So the first thing our volunteers are going to do is hand sanitize. Okay, so remember how to sit together, one on top of the other, right? And then we're going to put on pairs of gloves, okay? Which is that's pretty easy to do once you're finished. Right, so you're going to remove your mask for me. Do you have a place to put it in? Always the case, right? Okay, Henry didn't see anything there. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, I have some gloves here. So just come and select a pair. I think that's large. I think this is medium. Yeah. Okay, so we'll come here, but I'm going to step in the front. So everyone knows how to put on a pair of gloves, right? That's easy. All right, make sure it goes down. Now we're going to go to the interesting part, which is the putting on the masks. So you just hold it for me when I give it to you. You know the people who don't wear gloves too often, right? So what we have are actually the ones that the healthcare professionals would use, basically, okay? That's why they're colored green as opposed to the white ones. Okay, so the proper way to use this is actually to put your hands through the loops. So you have to hold it like this, put your hands through both loops. All right. What you're gonna do is not touching the inside of the mask, hold the bottom piece. Yeah. Put your face in, lift this up and over under your ears. So it's under your ears, okay? Now you take the loop on the top and put it on top by what we call the crown of our heads or over our ears. Yeah. At this time, you need to make sure your straps are straight, so you can act as buddies and just let her know. Don't touch her. Just let her know, okay, the top strap is not properly seated, or it is. It's not over her ears and under as well. In the healthcare setting, you normally have like a mirror as well. Okay, so we spoke about the seal check. So at this point, you want to form your, sorry, oh, the mic. I think you need to put it up a little bit closer. Yes, now that I have a mask on. Right, you need to make sure that you form this part, form the nose clip against your face. And again, you need to ensure that the mask is up over the nose, down under the chin. Okay, we're now going to perform the seal check. So place your hands together, over, breathe in, exhale. When you exhale particularly, if it's not seated properly, you're going to feel a whoosh of air coming up, either to the top or in the bottom. You're feeling a whoosh of air, yeah? Because I can see that the mask is too big for her. You're fine.
Yeah, I'm fine.
See? You can move your hand. Right.
Yeah, I can actually feel the mask pulling in.
And you can feel the mask pulling in a little bit as well. So great. So make sure that this is the only time you're going to put your hands to the front of the mask. But remember, our hands are gloved and they're clean gloves. At this point, depending on what you're doing, you may be free to use a pair of gloves because it's still clean. Okay. So now we've done our task and we're ready to remove. What's the first thing we have to do? Normally we dispose of the gloves. So we pretend today that we've disposed of the gloves because we've not done anything. And we would have done our hand sanitization, okay? Normally when you're dealing with really high containment spaces, you want to put on a pair of fresh gloves before removing your mask, okay? So what we will do instead is we will now demonstrate how we remove our gloves, do our hand sanitization, and then we'll remove our masks. Okay, because your face protection is most important. If you could just bring the bin a little bit closer. So we all know how to remove gloves, right? Everybody likes to hold it up in the air and pull, right? And everybody must see you taking off the gloves. No, please. Always point down, away from you. Pinch the inside of one glove and roll it down into your next hand. Put your finger underneath. Notice I'm not going to be touching any part that was in contact with something that was contaminated, and drop it into the bin. Nicely done. So remember, we have to hand sanitize between steps for removal process. Yes. Revving. And by the time you finish doing all of these things, right, the hand sanitizer is gone. A lot of people say, oh my gosh, it's too gooey. If you actually do the steps, it's gone. All right, so we're ready to remove. So what we want to do is never touch the front. Don't do like this. Okay, get the straps from the back. You want to get the one that's below your ears from the back. 2 hands. All right, up and over. So never once did we touch the front of the mask. Yeah? Don't worry, these are training supplies. So it couldn't be used. They're all expired. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for your assistance, volunteers. I hope that for those of us, thank you, Roger, for those of us who don't usually wear masks like N95 respirators, that has helped you to visualize what you should do in the event that this becomes part of your daily activities, and that in terms of the removal of the gloves particularly, that it's reminded you the proper way of removing your gloves. At this time, we would take one question from online, if there are any, as we prepare for Dr. Jones. And I wanted to ask Joycelyn, are we able to go forward beyond the allotted time? Right, so great. Okay. That's fine, because Dr. Jones has a fantastic presentation coming up, which I think will really round out the session. Right, Shelley.
Yes, Sasha, there's one question that has not been answered. Are there any negative medical effects to the continuous use of alcohol-based sanitizers?
Oh, okay. Not that I'm aware of, but this is a question that we can take back and get some evidence from our own research. I think that the use of the alcohol-based sanitizers is in combination with when you get the opportunity to wash your hands. Yes, the most that we know about is that your hands tend to feel dry after a while. So a lot of people now have your hand sanitizer plus your bottle of cream. So when you go and you wash your hands and you come back, you tend to moisturize. Women, we know after a certain age, you have to moisturize your hands regardless. So yes, but beyond that, I'm not familiar with what's happening in terms of that. But as I said, we can always get back to you on that particular question. Of course, it's also important to look for products that are gentle. Okay, so if you find that the 80% alcohol-based hand sanitizer is too harsh, then it can be from 60 to 80%. So you're fine. If you find one that's 65%, it is going to be it's going to be appropriate, and it's probably going to be gentler on your skin as well. Okay, that was from Dion.
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. All right, I believe that Dr. Jones is ready for us, and I'd like to welcome her to the podium. As Dr. Jones comes up, I'll just do a sanitizing of the mic for her. And I'll take my bag of tricks with me. This is for you. It's a little bit wet.
Hello. Good morning. I still have 14 minutes of morning left. So I am going to wrap up the last presentation for the morning with a discussion on wellness and mental health. I would like to start by acknowledging that I believe some persons may have already had a training on mental health. So or scheduled to complete a training in mental health. So what I'm going to be doing really is to kind of highlight the importance of mental health and wellness during this challenging time. As we know, mental health and wellness has been important even before, but given the journey that we're on now, and the need to be physically distant, inability to hug and laugh and do some of the things that we so love doing, and is a part of our human nature to be able to reach out and touch people. And also being in law enforcement, being in situations where you're probably at more increased exposure to stressful events and activities, and looking for and the need to have that way to bring balance to your life. So we're going to talk about mental health and wellness. I'm going to start by kind of talking about or discussing why well-being is important, and why well-being is such a conglomeration of factors, or how well-being is defined by so many factors. So we look at well-being, or we look at improving the health and well-being of people, because we know that to improve the health and well-being of a person improves their quality of life, it improves their ability to do the things they need to do to survive, to work, and in improving the health and well-being of people working together improves the ability of the workforce to achieve its targets, its goals, to be successful. So when we think about health, there are so many things that we think about. We think about nutrition, we think about physical activity, we think about our thoughts, we think about our thoughts. Who we love, we think about, what our purpose is in life. And so when we're looking at well-being and health, we're looking at all of these things. They cannot be separated. The definition of health itself is that it's a state of complete physical, mental, social, and I would argue spiritual balance, and not just looking at what is disease or a disease condition. When we view wellness, we're looking at more than just the state of physical health. That's where we're looking at emotional stability, the ability to think clearly, the ability to make connections to humans, to interact, humans and or animals, to embrace, to even be able to use your thought processes and experience or use your intuition in your everyday life. So we look at all of these things when we're looking at wellness. You will hear people exchange terminology. We'll talk about wellness, we'll talk about well-being. There is actually a difference, even though there are things that are very much synergistic, meaning they work together. Is that whole question, one would argue, of kind of what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's along that same line of thinking. So wellness is a set of habits and behaviors that focuses on your physical health, your nutrition, your ensuring that your medical exams are taken in a way that are that you can follow them, your blood pressure, your heart rate, etc. Well-being is a state of mind, emphasizing your emotional state. Wellness contributes to well-being, well-being contributes to wellness. So we can use them together and interchangeably. So this is just a diagram showing all the components of well-being. In the middle is wellness, but you have your emotional, you have your environmental factors, you have your intellectual factors, you have your physical factors, occupational, financial, social, and spiritual. And any one person at any given time is any combination of all of these factors that clearly defines or impacts or shapes their wellness and well-being. So, thinking about all of that, I believe, yes, there is a poll. So take a couple of minutes and just think about this whole concept of well-being and choose the factors that most affect, you feel that most affect your well-being. I know I want you to choose these. I want you to choose them, but I also want you to write them down. Pull out a piece of paper. If you don't have a piece of paper, type it in your phone. But I want you to walk away with this so you'll know the things that you need to focus on are the things that are important to you. So relationships, money are right now kind of the higher priority. So I would, poll closes in 30 seconds. I would make sure you write these down, and if nothing, write your top 3. If there is a factor that impacts your well-being that's not here, write that down, or factors. Okay, so it looks like relationships, money are 1 and 2. And then we have job at the next highest, and then exercise, nutrition, and sleep are running kind of neck and neck, and then religion, reason for being, and then hobbies. If tomorrow we did the same thing, there may be things that change depending on what's going on in your life. But it's a very good idea to list the things that are important to you. Go back to that list periodically and say, what am I going to do to make sure that these things that are important to me are balanced in my life? Okay, so that poll came from a research project that was done in which the evidence that came from the research project was that these are the things that, in most people, rate high on the factors that impact their well-being. And I was saying, everybody is different, so those factors are going to be different for you than they are going to be for me. There are going to be some people who don't want to be close to people. My father did not like people. He wanted my mother and myself to be home at all times, so I would argue that he just liked 2 people. But he didn't want to be around any other people. Me, on the other hand, I'm a social butterfly. I don't want to be around the same people all the time. Okay, so see, these are some of the factors that indeed impact people's well-being, wellness, and happiness. Now, another thing I want you to think about is write down, I'm back to writing. I believe that what you write, you remember, you recall. It's nice to type it. And I'm not sure if everybody has a, and because this is personal, it won't necessarily, I'm not gonna ask you to read any of this out, but I would like you to write down how you feel COVID-19 has interrupted, meaning the response to COVID-19, whether it's family, whether it's work, whether it's spiritual. Write down how COVID-19 has interrupted your well-being. These are the things that you would want to begin to focus on. These are the things that you would want to try to see how you can bring balance so that these things that have interrupted your well-being, maybe you can build up some ways to address that interruption. I've been told by several people that COVID-19 has not interrupted their well-being because COVID-19 has given them opportunities that they may not have experienced. They've made them create, be creative in the way they do things, the way they accomplish some task. And I understand people have actually been successful business-wise, especially entrepreneurs. So you can also provide a list for yourself of things, successes that you've had. How COVID-19, how you've made a change that has resulted in a positive impact on your wellness. Once again, these are things for you to keep, for you to revisit periodically and cross things off your list as those items that interrupted your well-being. As you begin to find ways to address that interruption, cross them off your list. So these are some of the ways that have been scientifically proven as to be interferers of well-being during COVID-19. Increased stress, interruption to life's activities, regular activities, increase in loneliness due to the inability to socialize as we would have previously, increased levels of depression, increase in alcohol and drug use, and increase in violence, including self-harm and domestic violence. So let's talk about this thing called stress, because that's usually the elephant in the room. Everybody's experiencing some levels of stress. Yes. Did I hear somebody say, really? Okay, so stress is a state of mental or emotional strain. I believe that when we first started, if I could get people to, in the room, raise their hand. When we first started for this question, and people online to think about it, when we first started the journey along this pandemic, there was a level of stress that is different than the level of stress now. If you agree, raise your hand. If the level of stress is different now than it was before. For the persons who feel the level of stress is higher, raise your hand. I have 2 people in the room. For people who feel the level of stress is lower, I would assume that's everybody else. No, I might be wrong. For the people who feel the level of stress is lower, raise your hand. Okay, that's 3. And the people who feel the level of stress is the same as everybody else, I'm assuming, right? So everybody's in a different place. It's been a year since COVID-19 started, and we did have different stress levels. When I'm talking to my coworker, I have to keep in mind that my coworker may have a different stress level than I have. Tomorrow, my coworker's stress level might be lower than mine. Today, it might be higher. And I have to think of all of these things. But this is one of the things that largely impacts our well-being. There are a number of things that impact our stress levels. We're all very different. And it depends on what day, for me, it depends on what day of the week it is. Matter of fact, it could depend on what day of the week and what time in that day. Okay? So before COVID-19, frontline law enforcement officers already had a high level of stress, correct? During COVID-19, it has increased for some. It has maintained for others, and others it has not impacted. That's just how we are as humans. And in addition to the stress levels associated with the work that you do, you have the stress levels associated with just your regular life and the experiences you have during that regular life. So there are a number of things that increase or impact our stress levels. And those things are the things that we need to continually measure and look at and be aware of. What can we do though? I wanted to share this. One of the things that, as I was talking, we have responsibilities. I'm jumping ahead a little bit of my slides because that's just how my brain functions, and I'm sorry. But I want to say I'm doing really good. I'm being very controlled. I'm not moving outside of this space that I've been given. And so I'm a little proud of me. But there are things that happen at our jobs, in our life, when we're talking to our friends, where we as humans are aware of differences in people. We're aware that someone is moving a little differently. We feel something different that comes off of them, and we may not know what it is. And some of us are more receptive than others. I personally, depends on what day it is. I may miss everything. Then on another day, I might pick up everything. But there are behaviors that you can see and experience that highlight and increase or the impact of stress. So the first column shows you like your body, what physical things that can occur to you that say, maybe I personally have a problem when I have stress. I have no idea it's happening most of the time. People who normally say, you do this thing all the time. I don't know I'm doing it, but clearly I've been told several times that I do that when I'm stressed. But your body, those are some of signs that you're being overly stressed, if you will. Then you have your mood, the mood changes, and then some of the actual behaviors. So you will notice these things about yourself, but you also may notice these things about persons that you live with, work with, or just know as affiliates or associates. So how do we manage that stress? And that's where I was kind of jumping ahead. We as individuals have a responsibility to understand our stress levels, understand the things that stress us out, and understand what we need to do to resolve those stress levels so they don't result in what? If you don't manage your stress, what can result in? Anybody in the room want to yell anything out? Anybody online? What happens if you don't manage your stress? You get sick, anger, heart attack, depression, hair fall out, you get wrinkles, gray hair. It's not all pretty, right? I mean, you get gray hair anyway. Well, I did. You stressed or not. You disappoint people, you hurt people with your anger. There are a number of things that as an individual, you have to be responsible for. But also there is human nature that says, I need to work with, right? I need to work with those people around me to help me manage my stress levels, right? Did I do something? That's okay. And then also there's the structural level, right? And the structural level says, what can I do for the people in my organization, both formal and informal? So the formal piece is, of course, organizational leaders will take it upon themselves to identify or make sure that people in the organization understand what services are available for you if you need support in managing stress and managing anything that is psychosocial or mental health related, generally. Sometimes those things are in structured inside the program, inside the work environment, and then sometimes those things are structured outside of the program. So as individuals, you have to make sure that you know what those options are and use those options. As collective, with your group of whoever you're collective with, home, work, your soccer team, your football team, the ladies that you go to prayer meeting with, if you're like me, you run with, you identify ways to work with people to help you manage your stress, whether they know it or not, right? So we have to take ownership of of what we do and who we are. So these are some of the things as individuals that we could do to manage stress. And depending who you are, you know, you figure out what your some people want to go sit in the dark room. That's how they manage stress. Some people want to go sit in the sunshine. Some people want to go to the beach. Some people want to go in line with their friends. I have a set of friends who in the States have been riding out to somewhere and sitting in the back of their cars, socially distanced and drinking. I'm like, well, just don't drink too much before you drive back home. But that's how they do. They get together, not just drinking, but drinking and having their liming. You know, they do it from the back of their cars because they can't be together. So you have to figure out what it is for you. So breathe. Everything is breath. I took one yoga class and I enjoyed the breathing part. I didn't enjoy the stretching part. And so I've incorporated a lot of the breathing into my class. Help others. Some people relieve stress by helping others. Burn off steam, physical activity, think positive thoughts, and write down your. So I'm coming to the end, near the end. What? Okay. So it's a lot harder to do than this appears. But one of the major issues around managing your stress is making sure that you take control, understand what is available for you, both formally, meaning in a structured environment, whether it's with your church, with your work, with your family, and then also know what's there for you informally, whether that's with a pop-up line, whether that's with a Zoom. My friends and I do Zoom lives on Thursdays. I'm from the US. I'm sure you figured I'm not from the Caribbean by my nice accent. And I'm really trying to talk slow because I'm from the US. The thing that COVID has done is reconnected me to my friends because now everybody is on Zoom. We have Zoom birthday toast. We have Zoom book club, in which we don't talk about the book, but we talk about everything else. We have Zoom prayer meetings. And it's amazing that I Zoom myself, not to death, I don't like to say that, but I Zoom myself to madness at work. And then I go home and Zoom is just another creature. It's lovely. So know what your resources are and make a plan. Literally write the plan down. You started. What do you have listed? You have listed the things that stress you. You have a small list of things that help you not be stressed. How are you going to address those things that you put down on that list? And then take the plan and begin to implement a plan. But be nice to yourself. Know that your plan is not, you're going to fall off the wagon. You're going to jump back on the wagon. You're going to say, oh, that plan was not going to work. I need to do something differently. But as long as you have the plan and you're working towards improving your stress levels, you're winning. So I think I've said most of this without saying all the detail, but create the plan and get others to help you with the plan. When I said others, I mean people who are close to you. Like my dad, he didn't like but two people. I was definitely a stress reliever because he could just sit back and watch my antics. My mother, on the other hand, just was like, I'm living through you because your father got me here sitting with him. But when you want to go play basketball, I'll take you. And yeah, that was her out. I was hers. Yeah, I was an only child. So yes, map your journey. Now, one more thing to write down. I talked briefly about what you do as an individual, how you can manage stress. And I talked about working through your formal and informal networks. Add to your list how you can share your journey to well-being and wellness, and who can be your collaborators, co-pilots, co-conspirators, however you want to write it. I would write, mine is a co-conspirator. I look for partners in crime. I have friends that say, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, if you're not going to be a partner in crime, we got to be bad. We got to have some fun. So write that down so you'll know who you can work with. Also write down who most comforts you at a time when you need. This is just for your eyes. So make sure you have that list and make sure you revisit it. And make sure you speak to those people, whether it's one person, whether it's a group of people. So one of the things that happens in almost any organization is that you have the formal structure that says, this is where, or this is how we support you emotionally, spiritually, from a wellness perspective. Sometimes in a formal structure, it works well, sometimes it doesn't. But then you always have, in general, you always have that person who everybody knows they can go and sit down and talk to. It could be within your church, you have somebody that's like that. Sometimes it's your pastor, sometimes it's an older person, sometimes it's a really young person. But you have those people. So make sure you take those people on your journey with you. There is a well-being there is a support for well-being that has to come from a medical professional. Sometimes we get to the point where we do need a mental health professional to help us resolve the issues that we have. There's another support from a counseling service that helps us resolve the issues that we have from a mental perspective and a wellness perspective. But there's a large amount of help and support that comes to us that will not have necessarily a medical perspective. That's that conversation with your pastor, that conversation with your sister, that conversation with your friend, that conversation with the lady that you talk to every time you walk around the savannah and you just bump into her and you guys walk for a little while and talk together. That's mine. So remember, you have those things, and those people are very much important for our well-being, and we should take advantage of them. I think I've talked about this. Yes. So, life is a journey. Enjoy the ride. Make sure you address your well-being. Interestingly, yesterday I saw a rainbow that was very similar to that. I wish I could have put it on the slide. It was really nice. That's my presentation. I don't know if there are any questions that I may have missed in the chat. Thank you all so very much for your service. And let me see if I can read anything.
No questions came.
No questions,
through,
comments?
Cheryl, there were comments regarding relationships and stress. For example, I think the people at Suriname Penitentiary, I believe, maybe, they talk about increased stress levels for prisoners, which of course would have an impact upon their health and well-being. Persons talked about some of the issues being sickness, depression, when you think about what stress can have on a person's health and well-being. So other than that, no questions.
Okay, thank you. I have a question in the room.
Yeah, so there are situations where there might be stress levels and situations beyond your control. So and even where the pandemic is concerned, so like things like the cost of living, which you cannot really control. So that could be a stress level that you may inherit that you can't really have, or you may deal with that. And the other one is some people may also relate their problems to you, although you may deal with your personal stress levels at your own convenience, but then people may confide in you their stress levels. So how do you deal with that aspect of it also?
Right. So you're exactly right. There are things that are completely out of your control. For instance, like you said, some of the economic issues, and that's where you have to find the ways to balance that where is it? It's coming. That's where we have to figure out how to balance. And one would argue that with certain, depending on what role you hold, particularly in your household, if one of these things is out of whack, you may not be able to balance it. It may spiral to the point where that's where you have to look for the support that you would have to get emotionally, spiritually, to try to make it over that hump, over that barrier. And that's where we have to identify that we need the different levels of support. Sometimes it's that conversation that balances you, that's with and not like it's one conversation, several conversations that balances you, that may be with a family member, it may be with somebody from a clergy, it may be work, it may be none of those things help. So you end up having to go for counseling or what have you, or you have to go for a run every day as opposed to once a week, or whatever it is. You just have to figure out a way to make that balance until you can get that piece of the pie fixed or glued or taped down for a little while. And what you were saying, about, so that's just kind of the feedback for that. And I understand that, or I'm hoping that you will get more feedback or more methods for dealing with those levels of stress with the enhanced training in mental health you will be having or have had. And the thing that I thought about when I was saying to go to people who like to make people feel better or like to help people with their problems, you're right. A lot of people who have that open door get the stressors of other people's lives. So those people who listen, those people who provide the psychosocial support, and if you happen to be one of them, you have to have a mechanism. You have to have your turn-off key, your turn-off switch. You have to be able to say no at some point. And the points where you cannot say no, you have to then know who your resource is to go and decompress once you've had those experiences. And yes, we as people who go to others for support, we do have to keep in mind that they also are being stressed and that we're putting a level of our stress on them. And how do we make that balance happen? Those are all very key and important items to consider. Any more comments in the room? Looks like there's no more comment online. So who's going to wrap up? Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thanks very much, Dr. Jones. I want to thank everyone online for your attention, for your comments and questions. So we did have quite a number of questions that came in during Peter's session about vaccines. I think there's one specific question that Peter wants to address now. I'll invite him to do that, but I wanted to let you know that we have collated all the questions. We've put together answers, and they will be posted to the CBSI Connect platform. I want to encourage all of you who have joined us today to go through the course online so that you can get your certificate. It has been our absolute pleasure to run this course with you this morning. We hope to see some of you in person when that is allowed once again. And we thank Impacts for the opportunity to once again collaborate. And we hope that this will continue because there are different aspects that we really hope to strengthen between the health and security sectors. At this point, Peter, are you going to take that question now? And after that, we'll invite Joycelyn to just wrap up. So thanks very much again to those of you in the room, as well as colleagues online for your time, and keep the questions coming. We will be checking on the forum. Again, I want to plug that. I want to encourage you to really complete the course online as well. Thank you.
Okay, this is just one quick question that I got here that I felt I wanted to answer. The question is from Alfonso, and he said something about the lines of, what about other scientists and medical professionals outside of the WHO and CDC who said that the mRNA vaccine may be detrimental to our DNA? So first of all, thank you for asking this question. That's a good one. I appreciate you doing that because it's good to have that discussion and that back and forth. So first of all, I wanted to say that the technology to make these vaccines are actually not new. We've been doing the mRNA vaccines have been being studied and being looked at for viruses like Ebola, flu, Zika, cytomegalovirus, which may not be familiar to many of you, but it's understood how these vaccines work. So this isn't so new that it's not understood. So I wanted to stress that. And then just to get a little bit into the science, and hopefully this doesn't lose too many of you, but messenger RNA, which is mRNA, it doesn't become DNA. Okay, so what happens in our cells is the DNA makes messenger RNA, and then that messenger RNA goes to a separate part of the cell, and then it makes the proteins. Okay, it directs how proteins are made. It doesn't go the opposite way. So that mRNA can't become part of your DNA, and it doesn't affect you in that way. They don't interact in that way. So I just wanted to give that as a quick answer, because I have heard that in other places as well, and I wanted to make sure that people heard that. So, okay, that's all I have to say. I'll go back to Jocelyn now.
Thank you, Peter, for that explanation. And I want to thank all our facilitators for today, Dr. Cheryl, Sasha, and Peter, for their presentation on the use of PPE. I will now call on Candy, and she will show you how to access the course certificate on CBSI Connect.
Hi, good everyone. This is just a short walkthrough on how to access the CBSI certificate. For those of you who do not have an account, you can go to impacts.cbsi-connect.org. And once you log in there, you would come up with this page, look for the Impacts logo. Then you hit create a new account. From there, you fill out the necessary required fields. Always remember to do the security check, which is I'm not a robot. And based on that, it will ask you to identify some pictures. Upon completion, you click create new account. Once that's created, you will receive a confirmation email. Upon receiving same, there's a link where you can click on, and from there you will be directed to this page, which is cbsi-connect.org. Right, with your new password and your username, you log in. You would see your name on the top right hand side where you can log in, and once logged in, you would be faced with this page, use of PPP for frontline security officers. With today's date, so you click on same, There you'll be directed to the course handouts, which would be available for you to download. And upon completions of the two sessions today, the recordings would be available. They are not there as yet, only upon completion. Then after you have the forum where you can place your questions, you just click on PPE for frontline security and you can add questions to which we would answer once you'll post them there. For the certificate, you go into evaluation and certificate tab. You scroll down, there you would see you must complete the PPE assessment and the training evaluation, and then you would gain access to the participation certificate. All right, just be mindful, those two must be completed for you to successfully complete the course to get the certificate. Any issues, you are free to contact us at CARICOM Impacts so that we can guide you to access it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Candy. And we would like to actually thank our CBSI Connect technical team for their assistance during this workshop. And that's Candy, Troy, and also to you, Roger. So thank you for joining us again, and do visit CBSI Connect platform to access all the material. Thank you.